Good evening, everyone. I believe we have quorum unless the clerk would advise otherwise. Oh, yeah, there are more coming on now, so I think we're good. Welcome to the meeting of the Finance and Labor Relations Committee. I would like to call the meeting to order and start by asking if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. I see none. We'll move on to the item number 3, the report of the Director of Corporate Services. And I would like to turn this over to Ms. Kruger.
Thank you, through the chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Perfect. I'm just going to share my screen here. Bear with me for a minute. Okay, so now, oh, we've got the wrong screen here. Hang on just a second. Okay, there we go. So I just wanted to start off by going over a couple of updates for council. There's nothing significant this time around, but just review a few concepts, and we'll get right into the meat and potatoes of tonight. So we also want to hear from, so we're going to start off by hearing from our remaining departments for the capital requirements and their overviews from infrastructure and development services and community services. We're going to start by having a discussion around some of our proposed expansion requests with the review of the Cooper site project next on the agenda. And we're going to hear some presentations from our outside boards regarding their proposed work plans and their budget requirements. Our next meeting after this one is scheduled for February the 7th, where we'll pick up with the expansion requests that are still outstanding and review the operating budgets. And then we'll leave some time after that and possibly the next meeting for further discussions before moving forward for council approval. There's still lots of time to have conversations around what you're hearing and what we're talking about. So don't worry, there'll be lots of opportunity for that to happen a little bit further. So I just wanted to go over a couple of things with the capital program. So really, again, these slides may look familiar to you. I've used them before, but really we're talking about identifying the project costs and the funding sources related to those projects. So we just refer to the capital budget really as a capital program, where we define the expenditures and the revenues. The capital program itself, the documents that you see in your budget package don't have a direct levy impact. Instead, those capital projects are funded by transfers to reserves that are captured in our operating budget program. So we'll get into that a little bit more when we start talking about the operating budget, but just a bit of a reminder there. And typically we're referring to capital projects as tangible assets only, but occasionally you'll see items in there that are project-based that may not be tangible, but will be driven by studies or things like that. Just touching briefly on expansion requests, because we'll start into that tonight too. Because we prepare our base budget on maintaining current service levels, the items that we've identified as additional or over and above our general operations are captured in this part of the discussion. So I won't go through this in detail, but as just outlined before, these are the over and above the base needs identified. So in order to control the net budget or to influence tax rates that translate into what our residents pay in taxes, there are really options. I say 2 options, but there's actually 3 or 4 within council's control. We can increase revenues that are not taxation, which reduces the reliance on our tax levy. We can decrease costs to deliver the services, which often and almost always results in a reduced service level in some form, because the costs are presented as what they are. And so whether dollars are cut from materials purchased or contracted services or staffing, all of them have the result of a decrease in the ability to provide the service to the standard that we've already established. Another mechanism is we can increase service levels or add initiatives, which then puts pressures on the taxation levy as well. So that's another option available for council. And we can decrease service levels, which again reduces pressure on taxation. So reduces pressure in the form of reducing operating costs and potentially reducing capital investment. So as I said earlier, everything that you have seen and will see tonight and in future meeting is still in draft form. There's still lots of time to discuss, influence, and or amend these presented estimates, and additional meetings can be added for further discussions if required. So once finalized, the budget does represent the staff's work plan and the financial estimates to deliver that work plan. So when the budget's passed, making significant changes to it after the fact is a little bit more challenging because we don't have any real revenue sources identified at that point, typically. Sometimes grants come along and sometimes we can find other ways to fund things, but typically after the budget's passed, it's a little more challenging. So just a reminder, I've mentioned this before, but to effect a 1% change in the budget, whether it's an increase or a decrease, translates into about $682,000. So if you want to decrease the proposed budget requirements by 1%, we would need to find or decrease operating expenses or increase revenues. And similarly, if we increase the expenditures or reduce the revenues, that's going to affect the budget requirements by increasing them by 1%. So just another reminder, due to the complex relationship between the tax levy itself and the tax rate calculations, if we change the budget by 1% in either direction, that translates into about 0.88% of a change in the tax rate. Again, using our $350,000 assessed home, $44 annually. So just to give everyone some context and framework as we move through this whole process. So since our last meeting, there's been very few adjustments, but I'll highlight these for you. So as starting off with the first line, we finished off our last meeting with a draft budget increase of 6.05. We've added or made some changes to some of the projected revenues and expenses related to some of our shared services. We received new information or updated information relating to the provincial offenses segment. And again, this had very little impact in the overall impact because we added revenues and adjusted expenses. So it really had a very nominal impact. We had an adjustment to our Huron-Perth figure that we had used for a preliminary estimate. Again, very minor. These are more what I would describe as housekeeping changes to some of our background documents, but also just when we go to establish our system and update everything in our software that we have the accurate figures. The next two items are really just an in and an out. We had inadvertently not budgeted revenues that we transfer from our landfill to our wastewater services. And we had not captured that as the transfer to reserve. So really that's just revenue coming into the wastewater division and then being expensed out as a transfer to the reserve fund. That's relating to leachate services that are provided by wastewater to the landfill. And again, only influencing the expense in the revenue in the wastewater. Okay, so really the bottom line right at this point we're sitting at is a 6.08% change to the initially proposed draft budget. This is just, again, my demonstration slide to illustrate that 6.08% in a levy increase translates into about 3.8% increase in the taxes, and how that translates into individual property owners as an illustration only. So also since our last meeting, there's additional information that we have relating to one of our expansion requests, which I will not talk about totally, but for our active transportation bike lanes project, we learned that we were not successful in receiving a grant that we had planned in our expansion requests. So the ultimate effect of this is that if we proceed with this project, that we're going to need to look at increasing the levy requirement more than what we had anticipated. We originally had included a $470,000 ask in there to supplement the grant, but if the project proceeds without any grant funding, the total costs are about $1.1 million. I will let the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services talk about that specific project a little bit further, a little bit later on, but that's just kind of the gist of that piece, and that doesn't have a bearing on our figures that we've presented so far because the expansion requests are not included in those figures yet. So really, as we're looking at moving forward, we're talking about adding expansion requests. So this is just a bit of a preview, and you've got most of this information in your budget package. But pardon me, as we look forward to the expansion requests in front of you, those that are, I would say, project type expansions amount to $147,000 of a net levy impact, which translates into 0.22% additional top of that 6.08. So I highlighted the active transportation one. All of these projects that are listed here are part of our proposed work plan, but they don't have a figure attached to them because we're expecting to fund those from alternative funding sources. So Cooper site, you'll hear a little bit more about later. The social services probably at our next meeting, and the water wastewater permitting you may get to tonight with but probably going to be part of our subsequent meeting where we talk about those extra projects. And in addition to the project type expansions, we've also got included in your package additional items for consideration that relate to staffing type expansions. Those amount to $963,000 in total. A typical strategy that we often use for staffing related expansions is to defer, or what we sometimes call as gap, that the impact of those between 2 years, because it often takes us several months to get up and running to get those going. So we would expect the impact to be about half of what the 963. So again, if all expansion requests are approved, when we get there, we'll talk about this again at our next meeting. We're talking about a 7% overall. So going from 6.08 right now to 7, that translates into 4.61 increase in the tax rate compared to the 3.8 we talked about before. So just again, framing for council's awareness. Okay, that's it. I'll just open it up for questions at this point before we slide into the capital delivery from Infrastructure and Development Services. Okay.
Apologies. No, any questions on that then? I see none. We do have a staff recommendation that the Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer be directed to incorporate the amendments into the draft 2023 budget. I believe those were all the amendments, Director Kruger?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Burbach, seconded by Mayor Ritzma. Any questions? Councillor Seven, you have a question?
Thank you. Through the chair, we are just referring to the amendments, like the updated projected levy increase. Is that really what we're talking about?
Yes, Director Kruger's nodding yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on those? I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion? And that looks to be unanimous, so that's carried. Moving on to item number 4 will be the draft capital budget and 2024 to 2032 capital forecast review continuation. And we'll be referring to our draft budget materials. And the first section will be community services. If I can turn that over to our Director of Community Services.
Thank you. Through the chair, as per the capital budget forecasts, it's divided up into 4 different divisions or sections. And this all starts on page 20 in your budget binders. The sections include parks and forestry, cemetery, facilities, which would be our sports facilities and buildings. And as I'm sure you've noticed, we have now broken it down individually by a building as our assets instead of having one big lump facility. So it was broken down individually, and then transit. Our 10-year capital forecast is $38,644,000. For 2023, our capital projects equates to $5,277,000, of which $3,860,000 is allocated to our transit, which is funded by federal and provincial grants. And if there's any municipal money that needs to be put into these projects, it comes out of our provincial gas tax. So the transit project capitals have really no effect on our tax levy. Overall, the community services capital projects then are $1,417,000, which would come from reserves, and which, as the Director of Corporate Services indicated, this amount would be incorporated into the budget as a transfer to reserves to ongoing maintenance of our funding. Some of the major initiatives we are looking at, the gas tank removals. Chief Paradis Fire Chief did a very good review at the airport as to why we have to remove these tanks through our insurance coverage. We have 3 tanks that need to be removed. The Parks Division office, their local shop, there'd be just a removal, no replacement. The cemetery and transit would both be removal and replacements. As well, we have hybrid buses coming and our ongoing facility maintenance. Challenges that we see moving forward are our aging assets and infrastructure that need to be addressed. And the 10-year budget is our guiding point in identifying these areas. Our successes is just taking the time and effort to formulate and accurately put together this 10-year forecast. And it gives us a great lens as to where the department needs are in addressing all our aging assets and infrastructure. So at this point, I can maybe proceed with the first division. Quinn Malott is here as well as my manager in case you guys stump me and I need some help from him. So we can do either Parks and Forestry, Chair Hunter, or do Parks, Forestry, and Cemetery as one, as Quinn is involved with both divisions.
Sure, unless there's any objection, I'm happy to proceed with everything at once, I think.
Okay. And if there's any questions moving forward, the capital projects start on page 26. So let's say basically with our Parks and Forestry, we have the playground replacement, lawn bowling, lighting, and removal of the tanks. And then with the cemetery, the road repair, historical monument leveling, and removal and replacement of fuel tanks. So if there's any questions, we can take those now.
Any questions on those? Looks like none, so we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, the facilities, we have an ongoing replacement for the compressor replacement. So this year we'll be doing one at William Allman Arena. Surface repairs at the Surf Tennis Court, which would also, once we do the repairs and painting, would be some additional pickleball courts that aren't there currently. It's just the one court that has pickleball. Phase 1 and 2 upgrades in National Stadium. And Milton tennis courts. We had an approval of 175 last year to move forward. Getting quotes for quite exceeded what we were bidding. So now we're going in to do this project, and 275 would do the whole fencing and complete new renovation of that tennis court, which would also incorporate pickleball. And the HVAC at the gallery, window replacement, at the municipal golf course is another one, as well as the infield replacement at the Packham artificial turf.
Councillor Seven, you have a question?
Thank you. Through the chair, just regarding the Milton Street tennis pickleball courts, is the intent to stay on the existing footprint that's there, or is that something that will come to council at a later date when the RFPs are completed?
So through Chair Councillor Hunter, Councillor Seven, with the existing plan there, we feel, I was actually in Manager Mark Hackett's here as well, can comment as well, but the existing plan, we feel like there's needs to be a few adjustments done on that. There's an awful lot of turf areas. The space in between the two courts isn't proper, it's very tight. So we would be making some modifications to ensure it's spaced properly. And the one part as well is to have a proper accessible entrance into that park and the tennis court area. So definitely once we get the RFP, we'd be more than happy to bring that forward to the subcommittee to comment on as well.
Sure, thank you.
Councillor Henderson?
I just have a question. I couldn't seem to find it. In the 10-year forecast, we had what the accessibility committee had brought forward to redo all the parking up at the Rotary Complex and the Egg Complex. I couldn't seem to find it in here. Do you know what it's under? And if you don't have that handy, we can get it at another meeting. I meant to send you an email today and ask.
So so under there, I did see that this morning, actually, or today, I was looking at through the chair. There's an asphalt paving for 2028. And
What page are you on?
Agriplex for future years. So it's on page 23. About 2/3 the way that down the
Oh,
page.
23.
On year 2028.
Oh, that asphalt paving. 390. But it was supposed to be over 10 years and it was over like $3 million. So this doesn't.
I would have to reference with manager with Mark Hackett. He might know a little more on that one, Bonnie. I'm not.
Yeah, it was projected like 3 or 4 years out a couple years ago. We passed this about, I want to say 4 years ago, but you know, time goes back and forth. I don't know.
Through the chair, I can look into this more and get back to you on that, to where that may have got or where it is.
Through the chair, I was just wondering, it looks like he's got his hand up. Maybe
Yes,
he's got an answer.
through the chair. So I can jump in here. So if you look at the 10-year capital forecast underneath the Agriplex facility, if you go into 2031, you will see that we have forecasted $1.1 million for asphalt paving repairs at that facility. I believe, Councillor Henderson, what you're referring to, the cost that came in above $2 million, that was for a full parking plan or a redo of the parking plan design. That has not been built into the 10-year forecast. We're looking more so at just asphalt repairs.
Well, that's sort of, I don't want to be rude, but that's a waste of money because the issue was accessibility and we need, we had a plan already drawn out. Peter Design had designed it and we'd gone over it at our meeting and it was in the forecast. So I'm surprised it's not there now because they were going to do one section at a time. And I believe they were going to start with the one at this end. And then it was to make it totally accessible. There was going to be a pathway all around the whole outside. And then you could get all the way from the street, all the way back to the Egg Complex safely. Right now you can't. You can just get past the doors at the Egg Complex.
Through the chair, if we could take that back and then we can reevaluate that and respond back to Councillor Henderson on that to get more information.
Sure. Is that Councillor Briscoe? You have a question?
Thank you. Through the chair, for the National Stadium piece, I know there's 200 allotted now, and in the forecast looks like an additional 300 over several years. I know previously we had passed that the local club, I'm forgetting the exact name, will also become responsible for repairs, just the balance of kind of who's responsible for what and how that relationship works in relation to these costs.
So through the chair, Councillor Briscoe, the part of the, I can do a little bit on this and I might get Mark Hackett to help out with this a little bit as well. We did have an engineering study done to identify where the deficiency in the building were and steps that should be taken. So that's how we developed this plan as to what stages we're going to do each work. And I know the roof is a big issue and there's some accessibility issues, some railing issues. As far as a shared cost sharing on that one, I'm not aware of that for other groups that were going to be involved in the sharing. I can maybe get my manager to also speak up on that if he knows more, Mark.
Yes, through the chair, I believe Councillor Briscoe is maybe referring to the IBL franchise that we were approached by in 2021. We did have discussions with that organization about potential future upgrades and renovations to facility. Currently, that facility is utilized by Stratford minor baseball only. And that IBL franchise that we were in discussions with has proceeded with a different city. So we are no longer in discussions with them at this time.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think it was the minor baseball piece had some obligation for maintenance. Is that maybe just the field maintenance piece? Is that where their obligations are coming in? Just seeing who's responsible for what.
Yes, through the chair, that is correct, Councillor Briscoe. We are responsible, the city, for all repairs and maintenance to the actual stadium and parking areas. Stratford Minor Baseball Association is responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the actual playing surface, the ball diamond.
Any further questions? Nope. Should we carry on then? Are you finished, Mr. Wolf? Or
So through the chair, our last one is the transit operations. So if there's any questions arising from that, we can take those now. And manager is as well present for that.
yeah, Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Mosley, I was just wondering the storage facility upgrades, storage and facility upgrades on page 39. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to sort of what upgrades would be included in that. And I'm also curious if those will be coming to council once as they move sort of ahead, or if you could just sort of outline that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. Through the chair. So this was funding that's been applied for, although not approved yet. It does take some months. But this was to kind of go in conjunction with the feasibility study that I will be receiving from HDR, who's doing the electrification study. I would expect that with all the charging infrastructure, electric buses that are about a foot and a half longer than a regular conventional, and whatever other infrastructure we need to do to go fully electric in the very near future, there will be a need to do some upgrades, if not some expansions to our current facility in order to make it sustainable for future electric. So it's been funded or it's been applied to fund, because I know once I get the report and that goes to council, there will be some decisions that need to be made as far as what we're going to do for the future. So that's why that funding stream is there, because I know there'll be some work that we'll need to do to make electric buses work.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I did have a quick one for Mr. Mosley. Oh, sorry, Councillor Henderson, go ahead. I didn't see your hand till late.
That's okay. My book keeps hitting my screen. I keep thinking. I was just trying to find it quickly, but I just can't seem to find it. Where is the money put aside to actually convert, like to buy all the equipment we're going to need to charge the buses at night? I see 2,200,000 for 2 40-foot buses, but we have to have the equipment to plug them in. Is that somewhere in this report and I'm just missing it?
Through the chair, just to clarify, the 2 buses that I plan to order are hybrid buses. So they're battery powered, but they have a small diesel engine that keep the batteries charged.
Okay.
So there's no charging infrastructure required for a hybrid bus.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
They charge themselves, and in this way staff can get used to driving them, and technicians can start getting used to working on batteries.
So they'll be similar to the electric buses when we start buying them?
Yes, they are very similar. The only difference is they use a small, 6.2 liter diesel engine to keep them. Once the batteries reach a certain level, the engine will kick in and will charge the batteries. But the engine only comes on when the batteries reach a certain level.
And do we have enough plugs? Do you have to plug the battery in at night? How do
No,
you charge it?
No, through the chair. The batteries get charged by the engine that is also on the bus. The engine that is on the hybrid buses are a lot smaller than the regular diesel engines that power the buses now. So as the bus goes along through the day, once the batteries get low, the small diesel engine kicks in and recharges the battery. So it never needs to be plugged in.
Oh, okay. And then when the hybrid part's working, you're not using gas, right?
That's correct.
So, and these are what, 5 feet longer than what we're driving now?
Through the chair, no, these are 40 footers. The new electric buses, at this point in time, the specs are 41.5 feet for a full-size bus. That's because of the room that's required for the batteries.
What's the length of our current buses? Is it 40?
That's correct. Through the chair, they're 40 feet.
Okay, I probably was thinking of that 35. Thank you for that explanation. That helps a lot.
Any further questions? I did have a quick one for Mr. Mosley regarding electric buses. Do you have a ballpark time frame on when we might be in a position to start looking at those seriously?
Through the chair, the first step, which I've spoke about, is the consultant's feasibility report that we should have in front of council by spring of this year. Once we get a fulsome idea of what's going to be involved to go fully electric for the transit department, then we'll have a better idea as far as what timelines are, depending on what expansions need to be done at our facility, where charging stations are going to go, the length of time. It's almost 2 years to, if I ordered an electric bus today, it would take almost 2 years to build. So I'm pretty much predicting there's going to be, from this report in the spring, lots of decisions and to be made as far as how we're going to proceed forward and how much we need to do to make electric buses work. So I'll have a better idea come the spring once we see the report as far as how long the transition from fossil fuel to electrification.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor McCabe.
Through the chair to Director Mosley, just wondering, are these electric buses in the capital forecast?
Yes, through the chair, you'll see there's 2 of them over, I think, up to 2028 and 2030, I believe, without having it in front of me. But there are 2 in the 10-year capital.
And is that the plan, is to only have 2?
Well, based on the timelines through the chair that I know now, it could be accelerated, depending on, like I said, once we find out in the spring what's going to be required in that timeline, then we can go from there. But we have 2 so far, but could be a lot more aggressive than that.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Another question I have, right now, the buses that we have, when there's a breakdown, we've kept the older buses and we have spare parts. These new hybrid buses, are they going to be the same model, and will there be still parts we can use, or?
Through the chair, yes. So as we retire buses, we usually keep them in the public works yards, as there are lots of options to take parts off and reuse parts. Only because supply chain, in some cases, takes months and months if they're even available at all. So that's been our standard practice for many years. The buses that will be hybrid, pretty much, except for under the engine and the batteries, we would use or possibility could use the same parts that once we retire a bus. So we make that a standard practice.
Oh, that's great. Hopefully that it works out when the electric buses come. Although there won't be as many parts.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Mr. Wolf, does that wrap up your segment, or?
Through the chair, just wanted a quick mention as well, as we're talking electrical buses, that note that the electrical mobility buses for our parallel transit as well, we have 2 in the capital forecast. So we're not just not looking at buses alone, we're looking at the whole department on electrification. And yes, that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move on to our next one, which is infrastructure and development services. And if I can turn to Mr. Krinkloff for that.
Yeah, thank you, and through the chair. So the IS department is comprised of 6 divisions. We have building and bylaw, planning, engineering, public works, environmental services, which includes water and wastewater, as well as climate. Some of the common themes among the IDS divisions is the further implementation and utilization of our asset management plan. This includes finding funding strategies to address the deficit in infrastructure that we currently have. We are also looking to make moves into digitizing many of our processes and programs, as well as with an inherent desire to include climate, accessibility, diversity, and inclusivity objectives and principles into the development and implementation of IDS services. Planning and climate divisions have little to no direct capital investment. Rather, they are inherently built or included in other various departments' capital programs. The planning division is responsible for all development applications that occur within the city. The division also facilitates, updates the official plan, a document that helps guides future growth and development in the city in a manner that meets the community's needs. Climate is really a service that represents the entire corporation. At this time, for budgetary purposes, it falls under engineering. There are several climate initiatives built into the 2023 capital budget. However, they tend to fall under the respective departments where those services lie. So the first section we'll look at will be roads and traffic on page, I believe it's 44. All right, so this 10-year forecast is largely facilitated through the engineering division. The engineering division plans and manages infrastructure renewals of municipal services, largely in the road right-of-way. Municipal services include water and wastewater, roads, storm, utilities, lights, active transportation, bridges, those kind of things. The division also provides procurement support for many other divisions and departments throughout the city. Looking at some highlights for 2023, we plan to proceed with a rehabilitation project of Dunn's Bridge. This is the bridge over Alone Ave near Lorne Ave. This priority was identified through our legislative inspection requirements facilitated through our consulting structural engineer. When the design is being developed, there will be public consultation. I should note that since this section of road is a boundary road, 50% of the cost will be covered through Perth South. So myself and the manager of engineering is available for any questions regarding this 10-year forecast.
Councillor Henderson, then Councillor McCabe.
I'm looking at project D19, new sidewalks collector and arterial. It says installation of new development charge eligible sidewalks at various locations. St. Vincent Street at Stratford General Hospital. So I'm assuming that's running from West Gore to Cambria. I'm not sure where Alone is. And Lauren, is that the one that's by those houses to the new apartment building that was built on the corner of Lorne and Queensland? You know, there's just that small stretch of about a house width or 2 house width where there's no sidewalk.
Chair, I can answer that. Yes, so there are missing segments all over those streets. So we'd like to try and get some of those going and filling them in. Certainly the one around the hospital, the one on Cambria, as well as the chunk on St. Vincent. We're looking at both of those as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe, you had a question?
Yes, through the chair to Director Krinkloff. Just noticing under the development charges of funding sources of 1.87 million, is this going to be affected by, do we see effect from Bill 23 on that projection?
Through the chair, maybe I'll start this and maybe the Director of Corporate Services can chime in. But effectively, there will be less development charges received through future development. So I anticipate that we will have to adjust our funding strategies going forward to reflect this. To what extent it is, I'm not fully aware at this time, but maybe the Director of Corporate Services has anything to add.
Ms. Kruger?
Chair, thank you through the chair. Taylor, that was well said, and I don't have a lot to add at this point. We haven't talked yet too much about the effects of Bill 23 on our capital requirements, and I thought maybe we'd save that until we've kind of done a bit of the review of the overall. But as Director Crinklaw has indicated, we are expecting there will be some impact. We haven't yet been able to really quantify it yet without a full analysis of what our anticipated growth is and when that anticipated growth will happen. So it's still to be determined, but yes, there likely will be an impact.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Nope. So carry on, Director Crinklaw.
All right, so if we move to page 54, this is the storm item. All right, so this is the 10-year forecast for storm. These projects are largely standalone projects. I'd also note that the linear projects will be included as individual storm items in our linear infrastructure 10-year forecast. So if there's any questions here, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions on that? No, I did have one regarding the Lower Nav sewer examination. I assume that's being done because there's a concern about condition. And that's not hitting the capital budget because we don't know the scope. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair. So I guess I'll start with there. Yes, the material type for that trunk sewer is prone to failure. So it's something we want to proactively investigate. And based on that investigation, we'll determine the scope of work required to rehabilitate it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Looks like none, so we can move on.
All right, so the next section is page 58. This is water. The Environmental Division oversees the treatment and distribution of drinking water and wastewater services. Due to drinking water's legislative requirements, the division has some of the most strictest reporting requirements. Responsible for water and wastewater services, this division works closely with engineering for their linear capital needs. However, they look after the remaining capital projects. What do we want to look here? So I should note that the projects outlined in this 10-year forecast fall under user rate services, which means that none of them actually hit the tax levy. The items listed here are largely maintenance related. So myself and the manager of environmental services available for any questions.
Any questions regarding the water? Looks like none, so we can move on to the next item.
So if we look to page 61, miscellaneous. This section covers what wasn't necessarily covered in other areas, in particular capital items for the Public Works Division. The Public Works Division ensures the infrastructure within the municipal road right-of-way is maintained in operable condition. This includes winter maintenance and the maintenance of storm, traffic, roads, signs, lights, sidewalks throughout the road right-of-way. I should note this division also has fleet services underneath it. Fleet services is a service that provides the majority of fleet maintenance and procurement for the corporation as a whole. This division also includes waste management, which includes the landfill and collection services. So one item that I can just identify now, and maybe if the manager of Public Works is online, there is a 10-year forecast item that's not up for next year, but might be worth noting at this time, if the manager of Public Works can respond, it'd be appreciated.
Yes, through the chair. As you'll notice, the line item for a new Public Works transit facility as a line item. We see it as an opportunity to address the needs of several departments across the city by developing one central hub location that will encompass Public Works, community services, transit, environmental services, and potentially more. Many of our facilities are of the age where we'll need significant resources to accommodate the space and requirements needed to operate efficiently and effectively. So we're looking at the city's snow dump, which is at the corner of Lauren and Romeo as a potential location for this facility. Be completed in phases with a department moving over first, and then we would bring in other departments as we go. We feel that this will address our needs for accessibility and energy efficient facilities. It also benefit departments by enhancing our fleet utilization, which will assist in improving the levels of service throughout the city. Transitioning several departments to a single site would also give us options to keep or to possibly sell off current properties.
Any questions on that? Yes, Councillor Burbach.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, just to clarify, so the 350,000 would begin that project. Is that correct? And then it would, yeah, I'm not seeing the 10-year part of the forecast on that one. Is that is it D 4.1?
Chair, maybe I'll start responding, then the manager of Public Works can chime in. The $350,000 identified for 2023 are pressing items that need to be addressed the facility now for the existing site. We have earmarked 3 separate stages in the 10-year forecast in 2025, 2028, and 2031. Those are just tentative stages, potentially that could transition other departments or when the need is there. Initially, like the manager of Public Works mentioned, the first step would be moving the Public Works department to that site initially. So this is the early stages for it. We still are in consultation to figure out ideal layouts and costing, and we will bring that to council when that is ready.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. And then seeing as that there's several departments that would be under one roof, which is great, then that cost would be shared amongst the budgets for those various departments. Is that correct?
Through the chair, at this point, we're looking at the Public Works facility. I think the funding strategies for future departments will be subject to when those separate parcels are considered down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, I see none. So we'll carry on. Director Crinklaw.
Thank you. So moving to page 64, sanitary. All right, so these items fall under the Environmental Services Division. Once again, this is a user-based system, so none of these items hit the tax levy. So there are a couple of considerations to note, and I'll ask the manager of Environmental Services to respond to some highlights.
Through the chair. Thanks, Taylor. So the first thing I'd like to speak to is the biogas design line item. So in 2022, there was a recommendation from the previous council that staff investigate alternative co-digestion initiatives in organics processing. And this is a result of the original RNG project that started back in 2017. So during this time, we've engaged with other municipalities, agencies, manufacturers to look at, what other alternatives have already been implemented that exist that would be suitable for a municipality of our size. Also within that time, we've also hired a climate change program manager within the city, and this is not an internal resource we had at the time. So something else for us to pull on as we look at these things. So our intent is to bring forward a management report to council this spring, which will provide our recommendations based on the research that staff has done over the last few months. And the proposed capital costs allocated for the biogas design line item would be for a study once we move forward based on council's decision of that management report in the spring.
Any questions on that? I did have one for the manager of environmental services with that biogas facility. You referenced that other municipalities were also looking at it. Is there a design cost sharing that could be had with other municipalities, or do we need all that money specifically for Stratford?
Through the chair, you could potentially set something up with other municipalities. I think that has been discussed loosely with some southwestern municipalities. It does get very difficult because to run any sort of biogas facility, typically, unless you're a very large city center, you don't have the organics come from within your city, so you have to outsource them. So now you're dealing with contracts with organic suppliers, and then you're splitting that. So you might have to create some kind of municipal services agreement with other municipalities. It's, I guess in short, it'd be much easier to do it as a standalone for a municipality, I think. But then again, not to say that that's not an alternative that can be explored as part of this to see further.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, so we'll return to Mr. Crinklaw.
Sorry, it's the chair, just back to the manager of environmental services. Are we touching base on the tertiary component at this time?
Yes, through the chair. So just something we wanted to bring up for council. So as part of the capital budget presentation, item D.5.1 is the tertiary filters 2 and 3 under drain replacement. So just a quick backstory. At the wastewater treatment plant, there's 4 large filter sections as part of the tertiary treatment. Filter 1 failed in 2020, and it was rebuilt and at about a cost of $170,000. Filter 4 failed last fall, and it was just put back online at the end of the year. So knowing that this was likely going to happen for filters 2 and 3, we put this in as a line item. Coincidentally, after the draft budget had already been sent to council, Aqua notified us last week that filter 3 has in fact failed. So we are in the process of proceeding with this work now as an emergency repair, mainly because it is winter and this is our low flow season. So to be down the tertiary filter this time of year is easier than when we get the thaw in the spring. And also, the idea was that both of them would be done at the same time, because you're then only paying for one mobilization, one shipment supply, which is the intent of doing them at the same time. So we don't want to do a single repair now, send the contractors away, then the other one fail in a couple months. So this is more just to notify council that we are moving forward with this as an emergency repair currently, even though it is listed as a budget item. And as part of our purchasing policy also, I do want to mention that there's an emergency purchase procedure, section 39.4, and us notifying council is also one of the requirements that we need to satisfy. So I'm taking this opportunity as to present that information to council, but I'd be happy to take any questions about that.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Through the chair to the manager of environmental services. So do we have to wait until, like, you have to get the go-ahead to combine these purchases, and that happens after the entire budget is passed? Is that correct? So if we don't, there could be an instance where the other one also fails and it's an emergency?
Through the chair, yeah, just to clarify, so we are moving ahead with this repair now because we can't do it and wait for it. So it is going to be paired together and have both of them done at the same time. And I apologize if that doesn't quite answer your question, but we essentially wouldn't be waiting to do the repair until after the budget approval. We have to kind of move forward with it now. So yeah, this point is kind of an FYI, just to bring council up to speed that it won't be paid for by any means, but the work will be started before budget has completed. Hopefully, I'm not sure if that doesn't answer your question. I'd be happy to clarify.
That's exactly what I was kind of getting at this question. Inelegantly.
Thank you. Councillor Briscoe.
Thank you, through the chair, for our manager. When we say fail, it's a technical term, but obviously probably causes alarm as well. Is there kind of a standard like lifespan of these pieces? Are we kind of we expect failure at a certain point, so these are pre-planned, or just kind of some more detail around when we say fail, what that means?
Through the chair. So that's a great point. So when the first failure happened in 2020, the decision was not made to just, replace the other three, because it could have been a fluke. It could have been the old under drains are made of clay, which the new ones are not. They're made of fiberglass, heavy duty. So it's much longer lifespan. But and the reason was it jumped on, like I said, was because we didn't know if it was going to happen. But then when the second one did fail in 2020, we realized, okay, that first one wasn't a fluke. We need to replace the other two. And then, as timing would have it, a week after council receives the draft budget, the third one did in fact fail. So the life cycle on that now we know is about 50 years, which we thought maybe would have been longer. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to do condition assessments on those types of processes of the treatment plant, just because of the design of it. And you actually have to take part of the plant offline and drain it, remove all the parts of the filter, which is extremely costly, and you have to get environmental approval through the ministry. So unfortunately for a lot of our underground stuff and our not easy to see with your eyes infrastructure, we can't really predict some things like that. But so hopefully that covers it.
Thank you. And just for a point of clarification, so they're all in the fiberglass. We will have all 4 fiberglass once we've gone through with that. And okay.
Correct. Yeah. Once these 2 are replaced this winter and this spring, yeah, we'll have 4 brand new under drains, which should tie us over for hopefully a very, very, very long time.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
That's just what I was going to ask you. Did they give you a projected lifespan expectancy of these, or are they too new to be able to know?
Through the chair, I could look through the technical reports that come with the source materials that the contractor supplies to us. But if I do recall from last fall, I think it was about 70 years that these are supposed to last. So there's other components of the filters that we do have to change, and there's pipe and stuff like that may fail. But the under drain is the big part. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of it.
So the filters that you have to replace, does that require a complete shutdown too?
No, we're able to bypass. So right now we have one offline and 3 filters in operation.
Okay.
So we'll repair filter number 3, put it back online. We'll drain filter number 2, the last one, and replace it. So we'll always have 3 going. But as I mentioned, this is the best time of year for us, because when it's cold and I shouldn't say no rain, because it's been raining for the last month, but typically in the middle of winter, when we have snow and cold weather, we have very, very low flows into the wastewater plant, and the festival's not on, so the tourism's down. So this is the lowest part. This is the lowest time of flows for the year, and ideally the time we can do it without impacting the system.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, back to Mr. Krinklaw again.
Yeah, it's the chair. At some point, the manager of environmental services will provide a tour of the plant so you can see firsthand how it operates. So moving to page 72, this is the linear infrastructure component. These projects are largely facilitated through the engineering division with support from environmental services. One highlight that I'd like to mention is the Ontario and Erie Street resurfacing. Upon council approval in November, staff applied for connecting link funding, which would see the province cover 90% of the resurfacing costs, up to $3 million. The remainder would be paid through the city. Connecting links, if you're not aware, in Stratford are 2 roads that connect 2 ends of provincial highways. And for our case, this is Erie Street, Ontario Street, and Huron Street. If the funding is not received, we anticipate that we would not proceed with the project in 2023. Myself and the manager of engineering be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Councillor Henderson?
Sorry, I'm just full of questions. I was looking on the existing capital assets and the page 1 right now. Is this not where St. Vincent Street would be listed, the finishing off from Redford to West Gore Street? Like we've done the first two section and then we did the Redford Crescent, and then I thought this year they were finishing that off.
So maybe I'll start this and then manager of engineering can chime in, but through the chair, that is correct. We did complete 2 previous phases of St. Vincent Street. From my understanding, the driving demand necessarily for that street weren't quite the same as the other sections. And in the meantime, other priorities have been identified that are more pressing to address at this point. So I know in the case for Albert Street, for example, we are having some issues with and concerns with the water servicing in that area. So we're trying to address that properly.
So we're looking at more than 10 years out before it'll probably be done. So now I'm wondering about the sidewalk that runs from the townhouses up to West Gore Street. Because then is that part of the connecting link that might get done this year? I didn't see St. Vincent on there, but that was going to be done when that section was done. Because they didn't do from the townhouse up to the first Redford in that second section. They were going to do it when they did the third section. You follow that?
Through the chair. Yeah, so that's another missing chunk of sidewalk. There are a lot of them around there, and certainly it's on the list for consideration. So we will focus on getting cost estimates for all the different chunks and do what we can. It may not be this year. Maybe that would be one of the pieces we do next year.
I have a question. So if we do the sidewalk ahead of the construction, will that interfere with it? Like when they dig the road up and do the work? Would that mean that sidewalk would have to come back up? Or I'm trying to remember how they did it on St. Vincent.
Yeah, through the chair, it really would depend on what other infrastructure we're replacing.
Okay.
As far as I recall, that piece of St. Vincent just really has some water main that needs fixing. We probably wouldn't be impacting the sidewalk when we did that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? Nope. Okay, back to Director Crinclaw.
Thank you, through the chair. So if we can move to page 80, and this is fleet. All right, I think I mentioned before, fleet services falls under the Public Works Division. Fleet services provides procurement and maintenance services for most of the corporate fleet. Starting last year with a big push made forward this year, fleet renewal will utilize more of a corporate model instead of the historically being done by division. This approach we anticipate will seek better efficiencies and utilizations of our fleet. So to help address our climate action goals, we've seen some changes in how we approach fleet services. And as we move forward, we're looking to provide more fuel efficient fleet. This is largely applied to our light duty and passenger vehicles at this time. Hybrids are being proposed for the near future replacements. This is in part due to the limited availability of electric fleet, their general cost, and the lack of electronic or electric charging station and other infrastructure needed at the city at this time. We are seeing elevated costs of hybrid vehicles. However, those costs are anticipated to be recovered over the life of that piece of fleet through fuel savings. Overall elevated cost and delays of vehicles has resulted in a bit of a backlog, and why you see some numerous carryovers from previous years. So myself and the supervisor of fleet services is available to answer any questions.
Any questions on that? Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just had a question, page 96, the R40 sidewalk tractor. Just curious, is this the vehicle that's used for snow removal and things like that?
That is correct.
Okay, that was just what I was confirming there. Thank you.
Any further questions? I did have one just regarding, I know there was a delay in availability of vehicles. Is there a concern that with buying so many all at once, we'll get into a cycle where we're having to replace 10 every time, or is there an opportunity to stagger those a little bit?
Through the chair, with the supply chain issues, even if we purchase a large number, the delivery of these vehicles are so staggered. We're still actually waiting on some from currently 2021. So I'm projecting that even at a purchase of 2023 units, we're going to be staggered out 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Burbach.
Thank you. Through the chair. Just following up on a question I asked at last year's budget about fleet and having all the divisions. So I'm just curious, so do we have all of the divisions now that are purchasing vehicles running through fleet? And when I look here, I see little initials like CC. Does that mean community services? Or I just wasn't sure what those little designations were on the page 80. I see some says engineering, but I wasn't quite sure what the other initials were.
Yeah. Through the chair, I'll start, and maybe the supervisor of fleet and maybe some other departments might chip in for this one. So I guess to your first question, like I said, the majority of fleet is now covered under our what I call our corporate services model, and that's that includes most divisions. However, there are a few that are not included. For example, fire has some fleet, and then some fleet we maintain but don't necessarily pay for, like the library. So for like most parts, the majority, and then and then transit as well. So we're not including buses in that that model that we're currently using, but pretty much mostly everything else. So
thank you. Any further questions? Pardon me, Councillor Briscoe.
Thank you. Through the chair, for the kind of longer term forecasted purchases, are those kind of estimates that should there be giant leaps in technology forward or anything that may affect supply chain, then that there may be opportunity to switch to more hybrid or electric or whatever the circumstances in the future may be?
yeah, through the chair. So we have those replacement fleet in our 10-year, and we actually have a 20-year forecast for this, just to recognize the need. Each year we reflect on what's needed and what's not, and make adjustments according to that 10 and 20-year plan.
Thank you. Any further questions? Looks like none, so we can move on to the next item.
All right, so if we move to page, I believe it's 105, this is facilities.
Sorry, Director Crinklaw, you had landfill listed earlier.
Oh,
and that
I'm missing it on my my cheat sheet here. Okay, so we'll just start with it, and then we'll go from there. So once again, landfill is a service that's largely provided through the Public Works Division. This is partially user rate supported, partially tax levy supported for what is proceeded here. So is there any questions regarding the items that are listed here? And
any questions on that? Mayor Ritzma?
Yeah, just a question with regards to that, the landfill buffer. Is that the actual purchase of land or the development of that buffer area?
Through the chair, I guess I'll start, and then Manager Public Works might add some more. This is a ministry requirement that we ensure no development happens adjacent to the landfill to help maintain our compliance. And so we will need to approach the adjacent landowner on a mechanism to ensure that. And that's an estimate that we'll likely need to ensure that is provided. So.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? Mayor Ritzman?
Just to follow up through the chair, is there, so we're reasonably, with land prices where they've gone recently, we're really reasonably sure that project cost will remain in that area or that scope?
Through the chair, we have increased it. This has been an item that's been on our forecast for a couple of years now as a requirement. And we have increased the dollar value to recognize that, but it really depends on what the adjacent landowner is willing to do. It might be a bit less than this, it might be a bit more, and at which time we bring whatever that discussion negotiation is to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Looks like none, so we can move on to the facilities then.
Okay, so this time we'll head to page 105. Facilities. So this forecast is the IDS component of facilities. Facilities is addressed through our building division. The building division is comprised of two main services, building and bylaw. The building division reviews and issues various kinds of permits, largely related to the modification and construction of buildings and structures. They also provide comments and development review and help facilitate capital programs with a general focus of facilities in the downtown core. So as we look for highlights for 2023, I'd request that the chief building official respond to a couple of those highlights, if they're available.
Great, thank you, and through Taylor and through the chair, happy to give a little bit of an update here tonight. So the biggest, I would say the biggest project we have, and was able to speak with a number of the councillors last weekend at our event, is the City Hall envelope maintenance. And the City Hall envelope maintenance comprises of repointing of the masonry around City Hall, as well as repainting and refurbishing of the windows and a little bit of maintenance on the slate work. Over the last number of years that I've been with the city, we've noticed small chunks of brick falling, and we've had an occasional slate tile or a little piece of tile fall off. So this is somewhat proactive. We have engaged a consultant after we noticed that this was occurring a couple times. We did have to close a lane of traffic. I believe it was in early 2020. And do some kind of emergency repairs on some of the masonry. So this is a proactive approach. The intention is to go around the entire building over a 3-year span. So the money that you see in this year's budget is actually to hire the consultant, and then hopefully to get started with some of the first phase work on this project. Other items of note, we're looking to carry over some elevator maintenance work that was scheduled for 2022 that did not get finished over at the annex building, and then just a few areas we're looking at doing some ongoing maintenance of HVAC units, as well as some partial roof replacements at a couple of our facilities. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them from council at this time.
Councillor Henderson.
Okay, can you explain to me why it says 4.6 million in 2023 when it's in the breakdown, it says it's only going to be around 1.5 for 3 years. So don't we usually break that out over the 3 years? So that would only be, well, maybe it'd be a 1.6 million hit because of the consultant, but I don't understand why it isn't broken out over the 3 years.
I see Ms. Kruger has her hand up for that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, that's a great question, and it's really just a matter of illustrating for council's benefit the total cost of the expected work, so that we're not in a position where we think that in year 2 or 3 that we can sort of stop the bus, right? So it's just to kind of make sure that we identify that this is the scope of the project in its entirety. How and when we cash flow it is something that I will work kind of behind the scenes on. And we've got it proposed there with long-term debt, but we likely wouldn't assume any long-term debt until closer to completion. So we're looking at probably internally trying to finance that over the first year or two, and then finalizing it at the end. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Through the chair, just regarding the City Hall maintenance, I'm just wondering, and I don't know if we have these numbers, but I remember in previous budgets, we did approve for sort of the annual maintenance amount. I'm just wondering if, I don't know if Mr. DeWeerd or who would best speak to the sort of cost of the annual maintenance if we did not go ahead with this.
I can take a shot at that and through the chair to Councillor Seven. Yeah, so if you look a little further on the 10-year forecast, we have deferred some of the maintenance. We've been spending anywhere between $20,000 and $25,000 a year to do maintenance. Now that was strictly maintenance on the front stairs, you know, to repoint and to maintain the front stairs at the front of the building. They would be included as part of this refurbishment. So the intention would be, I know we've added some or left some money in there starting in, I believe it's 2026 for about $10,000 a year for maintenance, but the intention would be that would be able to be backed right off at that time. After a couple of years of you know, major items falling brick, you know, there's a liability to the city. That's why we did engage a consultant at that time. And our hope at the time was that they would have told us that we could have done spot repairs. And if you recall, I think it was in 2020, we did have some money allotted for some painting that we ended up deferring on around the windows of City Hall. And it was simply because they said it wasn't worth spending the money to paint those windows if we were going to end up repointing the brick. And their evaluation, and they did a very thorough evaluation, was that the entire building does need to have a repointing. It's aged. It's a wonderful piece of you know, the history of Stratford, and we want to be able to maintain that. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Briscoe.
Thank you. To the chair, I want to preface it by saying it's purely just a question, not anything implied. Given the upkeep costs and kind of elevator issues we're facing, is the building meeting the needs of staff and the public?
Through the chair, I think that one might be above my pay grade to get into those items. So maybe defer to Director Crinklaw.
To the chair, actually, that's not necessarily a facility that we work in day to day. So that might be something that would require reflection and reporting about to council if desired.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Henderson and then Councillor McCabe.
My understanding is that at one time we talked about replacing the elevator. But do I understand this correctly, that the work they're doing on this, you know, while waiting for those parts and different stuff, actually is upgrading it so that it won't need to be replaced like anytime soon?
So through the chair to Councillor Henderson, yes, we did a full modernization of that elevator as part of this work. So we should essentially have a fully functioning elevator very soon.
Can hardly wait.
And Councillor McCabe, you had a question?
Through the chair, and maybe this is to the Director of Corporate Services, just the discussions around emergency repairs. Do we quantify in any way the cost of that when we defer things and we end up in emergency repairs, what happens when we decide not to do something and then it ends up, adding costs on in the long run?
Well, through the chair, I'm not totally sure if I understand the question, but I'll try to respond. So I think what you maybe are asking is I'm asking, are you asking if we have any sort of contingency plan? Is that the question, or is it around, I guess really what happens if a failure happens mid-year or mid-cycle?
Well, I'm just thinking about, and this is completely because I have no idea,
Okay.
but there are a number of things where things are failing. Are they often things that come up and get deferred and then fail? And are we tracking that?
Okay, I think I understand now. Thank you for the question through the chair. The historically, so I'm going to say back like 10 years prior to now, the strategy was often to squeeze as much life out of things as we could and sort of take the risk or maybe it's cross our fingers and hope for the best and that sort of thing. With the implementation and the advent of asset management, that replacement planning process is becoming a little bit more strategic, so that we're attempting to not wait until the point of failure before things happen. But there is still some, I'd say, legacy things or things that have come up, and I would point, I think not to point at any fingers, but so some of those less visible things or those, I'll say, trickier items, say, for example, a heritage building, things like that. Sometimes those would get deferred because it's difficult sometimes to quantify those or to just justify those costs sometimes. So those would be the things that I think typically would get deferred, but that's not a recommendation strategy that you'll ever hear from me. So just because of that very thing, if we have something where we have a project recommended that we've identified as being at or near its end of life, then we're basically saying that we've identified a risk here, and if we can choose to assume that risk, we can choose to cross our fingers and hope for the best for another year, do that sort of strategy, but that's not usually the professional recommendation from staff and from consultants that come along, just because it's a little bit riskier. And when we talk about failure, that doesn't always mean that it's catastrophic, but it almost always will interrupt service levels. So with the elevator example, even just using that as an example, that was never something that was expected to fail at when it did. We had some flooding issues, and that sort of led to that, or prompted that. And that's kind of almost always the way it goes when, nowadays when we are planning, we can't foresee everything. So I don't know if that answered your question fully, but.
Yes, through the chair to the director, it seems like the asset management plan is kind of trying to protect that from happening. Is that right?
It really is, through the chair. It's really trying to ensure that we don't miss some of these longer term things when they're less visible, or when they're less of I'll say, some of those sexy projects, they're not quite as, appealing for everybody. So it's and that's where when some of the framing that you've heard come from me over the last couple of months is to sort of say, okay, this is the big picture. These are all the things we have, and these are all the things we're anticipating in the next 10 years. Sometimes we can stage them to, depending on, their current inspections or things like that. Sometimes we can shift things, and we do that regularly through our capital budgeting process. But it's really just to make sure that we don't end up in a position where we've got all these things that have been deferred, and then they've piled up and are kind of falling down on us. So.
Thank you. I see Councillor Burbach.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, just a comment about that too. I mean, we have an example in the city of the Queen Street sewer trunk project, which, if it was done 20 years ago, it would have, the numbers I have are probably incorrect, but, it would have cost several $1 million. And by deferring it, it ended up costing us, what, 17 million? So as you defer projects, the price to get those projects done, it also grows because of inflation, and now because of COVID, the cost to do things is that much higher. So that's also a caution of, if you push it down the road, it could end up costing you a lot more in the long run. Plus, you may have to do some patchwork repairs along the way, which also costs money. So that's another factor I would consider.
Thank you. Any further questions? I just had, Director of Corporate Services.
You go ahead, Mr. Chair. I can wait.
Thank you. I just had a question regarding the long-term maintenance, specifically of City Hall. Is there an opportunity to employ modern materials when that would be a better solution? And I don't know that window replacements were required, but things like that, or whether we're fairly tightly bound with heritage issues.
Yeah, through the chair, I can grab that one. Yeah, so yeah, when we start to deal with a heritage building like this, we have many tensions, and it's something that we live with every day. It's the tension between accessibility, it's the tension between our heritage buildings, and then obviously the safety aspects of all of those things. This particular project, we're just looking at refurbishing the windows by repainting them, not replacing, not a full replacement. We can, in certain cases, look at modern materials, but especially with a building like City Hall and a lot of the buildings that are protected in our heritage core, there are parameters set up and standards set up that we do follow and we do abide by. I mean, yes and no. There are certain opportunities where we can improve things, but there are also very many constraints that we have to abide by to keep that heritage look and feel of the building.
Thank you. Mayor Ritzman?
Just to comment, just backing up a wee bit, we also have to remember that with some of these projects, we try to marry our municipal dollars with potential provincial grant dollars as well. So we, sometimes it's that timing is there as well, that to get the best bang for the dollars we're going to spend, instead of just resurfacing, perhaps infrastructure dollars come through the province and allows us to do from, as our corporate services director just mentioned, the less sexy work below surface, below grade with sewers, right up through to the curbs and the asphalt. So that's part of the process as well that we have to keep in mind.
Thank you. Ms. Kruger, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments just about the overall capital process. I just wanted to point out for members here, as well as maybe members of the public, that when we talk about linear projects and linear infrastructure, and then we also talk about water, wastewater, and storm and roads separately, there's a maybe I just want to make it clear that the linear projects basically encompass all of those areas. So they're those more complex projects that affect all those layers of infrastructure all at once. So when we talk about, or when we look at the funding models and the strategies to fund those capital works, if we look at the transfers that are required for the reserves, we're having to include, for example, just picking on one of those for storm related items, we're having to fund the standalone storm projects, but also the storm components of all those linear projects. So it's a little bit more complex than maybe it looks on the surface of the budget presentation. So I just wanted to highlight that piece. And then when we capture those replacements and those repairs, we're also including that information in our asset management planning process, and we're segmenting that data by asset classification and asset type. So it's not, Taylor makes it look so easy, but it's not, it's like there's a fair bit of administration that goes behind it as well. So the other piece I just wanted to mention too about the fleet division. So it is, you'll notice this when we get to the operating budget. So this is just a bit of a preview, that the fleet division does recover a good chunk of their costs by charging them out through interfunctional costs to the various departments. This is a bit of a work in progress, because ultimately I would think that, so currently the charges that go back to the different divisions are for the fuel and the repairs and maintenance and the general stuff, but not the departments staffing costs or parts purchases or things like that. So there's some things that are not quite yet allocated out to the various divisions. So we're not there yet, but it would be my expectation that going into 2024's budget, that the fleet division in the operating side will be a zero levy impact, because it's all captured through the transfers to the other divisions. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to take it, but before I turn it back over to the director.
Any questions on that? Looks like none. So okay. Director Krinkla, are you wrapped up at this point, or did you have further?
I believe that ends my my components to the chair. Thank
you. So that takes us to number 5 on our agenda, the report of our Chief Administrative Officer. And I believe that Director Kruger wanted to give an introduction before we hand this over to Ms. Thompson.
Thank you through the chair. Very briefly, just wanted to provide a bit of a segue here that we are going to be discussing the bulk of our expansion requests at a subsequent meeting, but this is sort of the prelude into it. So this will be the CAO starting us off on the expansion related requests by providing some background on her report. So I won't take any more thunder, but it was just to provide a little bit of a segue because it didn't flow as well as what I thought it maybe could. So for council's benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there are any comments about that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thompson. No, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hunter. So as Ms. Kruger indicated, this is an expansion request. This is to support the expansion request that is in your budget binders to recommend an action plan to guide the implementation of the Cooper Block redevelopment strategy for 2023. And you will note in the report that there is some carry forward to 2024. However, the budget implications are just for 2023. There is some background here in the report for your awareness. And there's an update on the progress that we made in 2022. And I just wanted to quickly highlight that progress because it is significant for this project. The further appeals were considered and dismissed with respect to the land expropriation compensation award process. After a 4-year effort, the city was issued the certificate of property use as it relates to the YMCA and the community hub facility. This is very significant. This was a 4-year effort by the city with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. And this identifies the need that as we move forward on the next stages for the development of next projects, the importance of starting those discussions with MECP for next stages. We also commenced phase 1 of the capital fundraising campaign, and there will be a report coming to council with respect to that and the feasibility and to lay the groundwork for a future campaign. We are pleased to have the University of Waterloo confirm its continued interest in developing the property for student residence and academic buildings. The city staff have advanced the internal site roadway and utilities design. That work is fundamental for the next phases. So we have advanced that and are quite pleased that we've got that design work done. As you know, we have been taking down the failing roof structure on the existing structure. We are dealing with the asbestos and the failing system. So that work is almost completed. And that work would have to be done regardless of the next phases of the work. The roof was failing and our structural engineers were quite concerned of the risk to the city. We are underway with environmental investigation work related to a potential long-term care facility near our proposed Y and community hub. And People Care is interested in developing a 160-bed long-term care home in Stratford, either on a portion of the Cooper Block or the Vivian Line 37 property. So that is the successes from 2022. There is a bit more information in the report on the building restoration. But under the analysis, as I said, because we've eliminated some of those uncertainties with the project, we are looking forward to advancing the next stages. They're listed there in the report under the analysis. And as I said, the university and the Y have indicated to the city they're interested in advancing their next projects. For the university, it is housing. For the Y, they have identified the need for a new facility to serve the community. We are also looking for permanent space for the Active Adults Association. We have a commitment with them and we would like to advance on that. As I stated, it is significant to have identified that it is a multi-year process to get the approvals through the MECP. So that is work too that will be critical, and timing is subject for our next phases to that MECP process. I've included in there a bit of information with respect to the zoning that is in place for the Grand Trunk Anchor District Zone. So under proposed action plan for 2023, because of the challenges with the environmental condition of the property and the permitting, we've identified 7 stages for the action plan. And it's the long-term care block on block 2D or 2C or the Vivian Line 37 property, the University Student Housing Building, the YMCA Community Hub Building, including permanent space for the Active Adults Association, the design of the site roadways and the utilities and services, the update to the site layout drawings and the developable parcels, the Community Hub fundraising, and the record of site condition. So that is going to be the basis of our action plan for 2023. The expansion request form that you've got in your budget binder identifies the funding. I can say that this would not have a direct impact on the tax levy for 2023 because there are funds in the Grand Trunk Reserve that we are proposing for the work in 2023. Further on in the report are the target dates and some of the tasks for each of those projects that we've identified in the 2023 action plan. We've also included information on the financial impact, and as I've indicated, there would be no direct impact on the tax levy for this year, but this proposed action plan will advance a number of the projects in there, including the commitment to the University of Waterloo, as well as our partnership with the YMCA to advance the community hub and a new Y to serve the entire community. The recommendation in the report is that subject to budget approval, we're asking that the action plan as described in the report be approved, that we be authorized to proceed with the action plan, including starting those discussions with MECP, and that we will be reporting back to council throughout the project. I just wanted to reiterate that this is just one of further conversations and reports to council that will be coming forward. So there will be lots of further conversations with respect to council on advancing it as we get into further discussions with the university, with the YMCA, with the fundraising and the long-term care home. But this will set the stage for this work to begin in 2023 on implementing the next stage. The Grand Trunk Master Plan has been through public engagement. It was adopted by council. It is part of council's strategic priorities. And I know that there is a great interest in the community with respect to advancing this project. So, Mr. Chair, those are my initial comments with respect to the report on the expansion request. And I'm pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Before we begin, this is a really large topic, and before we get too far afield, I wonder if we could try to limit the discussion to just the budget implications as presented. I think that's fair with the clerk. That's acceptable? All right, thank you. Councillor Henderson.
We used around 2 million for the roof, and this would be another 2,500,000. How much will that leave us in the, do you know the balance in the Cooper site reserve?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer this question to the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. Ms. Kruger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This project pretty much uses most of what's been left in the Grand Trunk Reserve. So any of the future steps that are going to be involved in any future capital requirements in any facilities would be over and above that. So.
And can you just remind me of other things that we're doing? There was talk at one time, I think, of if there was extra money at the end of the year, like other money going into that fund. Do you foresee anything else going in, except when we start the fundraising? But I mean, do you foresee any other money coming in somewhere for that?
Ms. Kruger?
I'll defer to the CAO, but in my limited experience with the city of Stratford, I have not heard of any other identified funding sources for this particularly. That said, there may be some opportunities to discuss our overall reserve holdings and what we've got allocated in various reserves to potentially redistribute if there's some movement there. But that's premature to say at this point, but that would be another option.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Briscoe?
Thank you. Through the chair, for the 125,000 allotted for the consulting services, would you be able to provide greater clarity on exactly what the consultant will do, and if there's any lobbying consulting considered within that budget? Just because I think based on the report and the need to potentially expedite in the future or to get allowances, especially at the provincial level, this project is very well set up for a lobbying firm to support us through this project. It's a long-term project. Looking at it, it's going to extend through a provincial election, which means kind of it lines up well with our timeline that within 2 or so years, when they're looking to make those kind of approvals in expedited fashion, that puts us in that year of provincial election where a lot of approvals happen really quickly. And we know in the lobbying world, it takes about a year or two to develop the strong enough relationships to then have success in those types of asks. So now strategically would be a really good time to kind of engage in that to help us maximize our opportunity with the province as well. If there's a changing of the guard at a provincial election, we don't lose any momentum having developed relationships on the bureaucratic side already. Just if that's a consideration with the type of consulting services we're moving forward with.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. With respect to relations and lobbying with the upper levels of government, we continue to pursue those. As you are aware, we prior to the 2018 provincial election, there was provincial and federal funding identified for this project, but with the change in government, that funding was not given final approval. So we have continued to work with both the provincial and federal governments in looking for funding for this particular project. There is money in my CAO's operating budget to work on building and strengthening those relations so that when we become aware of additional funding opportunities for this particular project, that we are positioned well for that. We continue to reach out to the various ministries. We are also working with our MPP and our MP office to advance the need for this project and the benefits that it will bring to all residents in the city of Stratford, including potential for childcare, community space, long-term care accommodations. With the university there's just a natural fit with the Y and the services that can be there. So we are excited about the project, but we know that we will need to build and enhance those relations. So that work continues, and we are looking to build and get some advice on best how to further advance those conversations with the various ministries.
Thank you. Any further questions on this? Councillor McCabe?
Through the chair to the CAO, I'm just wondering, is the request for expansion directly tied to the action plan?
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, through you. Yes, it is. So if you look at your expansion request, page 9 of the expansion request, you will see the breakdown for site servicing, the fundraising phase 2, subject to what phase 1 results are, the environmental work, and the site servicing. So in detail in the expansion request, you will see those figures there. So that was a long answer to the short answer, which is yes, it is directly tied to the expansion request.
Thank you. Any further? I see Councillor Burback and Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Through the chair. Yeah, just a question about an advisory group, an ad hoc community advisory group that was discussed at all. And I was assuming that there would be some costs associated with that. So I'm wondering if that is somehow included in this budget expansion request, or would those costs be operational or low enough that they aren't noted here?
That looks, I think, Ms. Thompson, that's what we will be discussing at 5.2, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, through the chair. That is the next report on the agenda for the terms of reference, draft terms of reference for the ad hoc committee. And I do address the financial impact of that committee in that next report. If you could just, let's finish this and perhaps then we can talk about that one if that is okay with the chair. But I'm pleased to discuss it now if you would like.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Burback? That we
Yeah, I was curious more like what budget line is it going to fall under, but that's fine. We can discuss it with the next report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Seven, you had a question?
Thank you. Through the chair, I do have a few questions. Following up on what Councillor Henderson was asking about, I'm just curious about by proceeding with this in the 2023 budget, I'm wondering if we could maybe have a little more information as to what the amount possibly. Is there a way to know the amounts that we are sort of committing to in future budgets that are not funded at this point, or will we not be able to sort of project that because there's so many moving pieces at this point?
Ms. Thompson, are you able to handle that one?
I will start and then I will defer to the Director of Corporate Services to correct me. There are so many moving parts to this. We have commitments to the university as well as a partnership with the Y, and we are advancing based on their timelines. We will be working with them. They will be contributing to portions of this. There are certain commitments, such as the internal servicing, that the city will need to provide for. We will be pursuing all avenues that are open to us for identifying funds for this. But at this point, we need to advance the action plan if we want to advance the next stages for the Grand Trunk Master Plan. As I said, we have the long-term care facility that is interested. The university has identified that student housing is important. This is why, as I said, we need to advance this work, but also find where the sources of future funding are going to come from. We have initially identified what the ongoing operating costs for the community hub and the Y will be. We will be entering into an arrangement through an agreement that will come before council as to who's funding what. Because that pricing was identified about 5 years ago, it is out of date. I don't want to present it now. And I will say it will take the refinement of the internal use of the community hub space so that we can then better identify what our ongoing operating costs will be for the hub. The ad hoc Grand Trunk committee that we're working on will be a sounding board to council on developing and finalizing what that internal space will look like for the community hub. So we will need their advice as well as public engagement on finalizing those. So again, I'm sorry, it's a long answer, but the short answer is I don't have updated information that I can give to you at this point with respect to the operating costs for the community hub.
Great, thank you. And through the chair, I did have one more question, but would now be okay.
Sure.
Okay. So through the chair, following up on what Councillor Briscoe was talking about, I am very interested in exploring that myself a little more and getting more information on that. I'm just wondering, through the chair, would now, as part of this motion and sort of action plan, be the time that staff would need to know about that, or is this something that I guess I'm just asking in the CAO's, Ms. Thompson's opinion, would it be something that could be put in a motion to look into and report back as part of this, or what would be the best way to go about that?
Ms. Thompson?
Perhaps if you could maybe phrase the motion that you're thinking of putting forward, that would help staff be able to clarify with respect to whether this is timing is right, or if this should come at a subsequent budget meeting or council meeting.
Sure. So through the chair, I don't know enough about it, I suppose, as Councillor Briscoe was talking about it, but I think what I would be interested in is more information, and if that would be something we could pursue and tie that into this, the plan for the community hub. I guess through the lobbying sort of option or consultant, or I think maybe Councillor Briscoe could maybe help out, but that would be sort of what I would be looking for, if that's helpful at all.
Ms. Defoe, did you have something to add on this?
Through the chair, I was just going to clarify that we were referring to the lobbyist registry, but I also did see Councillor Briscoe's hand, so perhaps she had some additional information.
Thank you. Councillor Briscoe?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, I'm kind of putting my lobbyist hat on. I think kind of the motion would be to perhaps direct staff to begin investigating potential lobbying firms to work with, and as well as determining if now or at what point in the current action plan would be best to engage with those lobby groups to sign on to our project. I think it's strategically the time to investigate that right now, to have input. Just there's going to be a wide variety of environmental legislation changing in this space, and it just allows, it takes the burden off of staff to be monitoring, as we have an outside counsel then consistently monitoring and ready to jump at any moment, and effectively jump because they have longstanding relationships with both the bureaucratic side as well as the policymaking side. So kind of can fast track a lot of the pieces that are already have been identified that will be needed to be fast tracked. So that would be kind of my recommendation of both a motion and kind of way to proceed.
Thank you. So are we asking for, I don't want to get too far ahead. Are we asking for a motion then to investigate hiring a lobbyist? Is that what you're proposing, Councillor Briscoe?
Yes, yeah.
Perhaps Ms. Defoe could help with proceeding on that.
Through you, the chair, I do see the CAO's hand raised.
My apologies, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Through you. I'm just wondering if we could have that discussion when the operating budgets come up at the subsequent meeting. As I indicated in my operating budget, there are some funds identified in there, and perhaps we could then hold the discussion and have it at that subsequent meeting for any motions that you would like to make at that time.
Thank you. I did see a question from Councillor Henderson.
I'd like to move 5.1.
Right, thank you. Mayor Ritzman, you're seconding that. So 5.1, I'll just read it to make sure we're on board. Staff recommendation that subject to the 2023 budget approval by council, the action plan for redevelopment of the Cooper block as described in report FIN 23-008 be approved, that the CAO be authorized to proceed with the action plan, including initiating discussions with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and that the CAO report to council in June 2023 with an update on the project financial needs and expenditures for 2023 and 2024. So we have Councillor Henderson moved, Mayor Ritzma seconded, and question from Councillor Seven.
Thank you. Just when we discussed this in the operating, or what we were just discussing in the operating budget as suggested, would it at that point be, would we be able to tie that request to the action plan potentially if we wanted to after this has been moved and passed by council?
Not sure who's best to answer that one, Ms. Defoe or Ms. Thompson?
I'm just wondering through you, Mr. Chair, if perhaps Councillor Seven could give some more clarity with respect to the outcome that he's looking for.
Sure, through the chair. So I guess I'm just in the event that council decided as discussions in the operating budget to request staff investigate options or register the lobbying. I'm not sure what the proper language is. If that is the direction council takes at that point, could we then, or would it be tied to this action plan, or would we need to adopt that sort of direction now as part of this motion and the plan?
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, thank you. My recommendation to council is that if you adopt the 2023 budget for this office, including the amounts in the operating budget, that would be the approval for staff to proceed. And the motion that has just passed that does say subject to 2023 budget approval ties the two together. That would be my advice to you, is that when the overall budget is adopted, unless you make any changes and take anything out or add anything into the operating budget, those two pieces would be tied together based on, as you said, the motion that you've made tonight and any future motions that you make at the subsequent budget meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the motion on the floor? I see none, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And I believe that is unanimous. Oh, I should have asked if there's anyone opposed, but I thought I counted unanimous. Councillor McCabe, did you have a question, or are you opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. That motion carries then. Thank you. Moving on to 5.2, which is the Ad Hoc Grand Trunk Renewal Committee Terms of Reference draft. And I'll turn this to Ms. Thompson as well.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, this report and attached draft terms of reference for the Ad Hoc Grand Trunk Renewal Committee. The previous council did give direction to develop draft terms of reference for the composition of a committee. So we have prepared those draft terms of reference for your consideration. The purpose, the mandate is to provide support and a forum for input and exchange of ideas on the renewal of the Grand Trunk building. It is subject to council adoption of the draft terms of reference as well as the appointments. The purpose of the committee is to support the Grand Trunk Master Plan adopted by council. It is to act as a sounding board to the city on matters dealing with the renewal of the building, including building designs and architectural plans, to identify fundraising opportunities and support the fundraising initiatives, to advise and assist with the development of a public engagement program and promote the activities of the Grand Trunk renewal, and to liaison with other committees or organizations that could have overlapping roles and responsibilities. So the terms are there, the draft terms are there for your consideration. In the financial impact, we believe that the amount to support the first year of the Grand Trunk of this committee will be nominal. So they can be included in the overall budget for the action plan, and within that the amount that we have requested with respect to the action plan. If it is anything different, if the committee, once they're up and running, identifies any significant things that we cannot accommodate in the budget, we will be back before council asking for a decision with respect to that. But as I said, in the initial year, it is anticipated that we can support the first work of this committee through existing budgets.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
I was wondering under the terms of reference, if we could add a citizen rep from the Grand Trunk community group. That's, I know Lauren Bolton's been very involved with this for many, many years, and he sent us all his updated report. I'm just wondering if we could have somebody from that committee on it, because they've been very active. They had a meeting at the Copper Light, and some of us were there, and I think it's important that we reach out to that group too. I don't know what others feel about it, but that's my 2 cents.
Any further?
Should I make a motion for that, or?
Ms. Defoe, do we need a motion for that?
Through the chair. So at present, there is no motion on the floor. So there could be a motion that the terms of reference be adopted and include an additional representative from the Grand Trunk Community Group. So we could certainly have a motion similar to that on the floor.
Thank you. I did see some questions from Councillor Beattie and I believe Councillor Seven. Go ahead, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you. And through the chair, just a general comment here. We do have what I'll call one citizen at large. My fear is that once we start opening this up for conversation, I believe that staff has done a good job of identifying the various groups in our community that can represent this ad hoc committee. Because again, I appreciate Councillor Henderson's comments, but we do have citizen at large. If we start this conversation, we'll have an endless list of people who are wanting to be added onto this ad hoc committee.
Thank you. Councillor Seven, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'm wondering, my question is for Ms. Thompson. If you could speak to the, was there consultation with the group that was initially requesting this group or this advisory committee regarding the terms of reference?
Through the chair, I'm not sure who you are referring to. These draft terms of reference were prepared based on the direction of council given from last term. In recommending the composition, I can say we were looking for specific skill sets that would be of benefit and an asset to the work in supporting the Grand Trunk Master Plan adopted by council and being the sounding board with respect to that. So I'm not sure who you're referring to as whether we consulted.
Okay, thank you. And just through the chair, I guess as a follow-up, this maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought this was the advisory committee that was sort of as a result of the I think the group Bonnie's referring to. I can't remember the name of it, but maybe Councillor Henderson could fill in if she has the name of it. But I thought that this, maybe I'm wrong, this wasn't the result of the request of that group.
Councillor Henderson, you did have a question, I believe, or a comment to this?
Yeah, I had sort of two. I actually made the motion, I think it was then like something like February of 2018 or 19, that we should start a fundraising committee and start fundraising towards it. And we've slowly been working our way towards it to get to that point. And I think I know what you're talking about. At that meeting, they were saying within 90 days of new council, they wanted to strike a committee, but that's slightly different than this. Although, that's why I thought maybe it would be a good idea to have one of them on it.
Councillor Seven, did you have a comment?
Sorry, through the chair then, I'm not sure, I'm not sure who to direct this at, but if maybe staff or Ms. Defoe, because I remember, I think it was Mayor Matheson had made a motion. I think it was very near the end of the term about a committee, and I'm not, is that a different committee that will come forward at some point? I know I'm putting staff on the spot, but I just can't remember the exact motion.
Ms. Dayfall?
Through the chair, so it's my understanding that a motion was moved and seconded previously by the former council, and that was that council direct staff to develop terms of reference and composition of a citizens advisory committee to support the development of the Grand Trunk site, its architectural design, development, and fundraising, and that the development of this committee be subject to approval by the 2022 to 2026 term of council.
Through the chair, so thank you. That's yes, thank you, Ms. Defoe. And so will that be coming to council in addition to this? This is something different.
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. So no, that is the direction of council that I was referring to. And so based on that, we have adjusted the name a little bit, but that is the committee that we are bringing forward with the draft terms of reference for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McCabe?
Through the chair, to me, this doesn't sound like the same motion that you came forward with to create a citizens advisory committee. The term seems slightly different. That's why I also am a little confused at what the value of this proposed ad hoc committee is.
Sorry, did Ms. Thompson, did you have an answer for that question, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I cannot speak for council, but as I said, they did feel that it was important to be able to engage a range of citizens and to identify skill sets that could come forward to assist the city with giving input, being a sounding board, and bringing additional skill sets to the project here. So as I said, in the draft terms of reference, the name is slightly different. If you want to change it to something else, that is council's prerogative. But it does speak to supporting the Grand Trunk Master Plan. It talks about giving input on the building design, architectural plans, the fundraising opportunities. I will say that the current feasibility work that is being done by staff and our consultants, KCI, there will be a report coming that will identify more opportunities with respect to the feasibility of the fundraising. And out of that will be next phases for the actual fundraising campaign and how that's going to proceed. But in the meantime, we believe that there is value in having citizens engaged to provide their input and to be a sounding board for the city as we advance the action plan.
Thank you. I think there was a question from Councillor Briscoe and then Councillor Beattie.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think the wording I'm stumbling on is the sounding board piece, and I obviously am new to this, so if you could elaborate on that. And I'm wondering if kind of some of the concerns we're hearing, if there's an opportunity to perhaps add that the purpose of the committee is to represent the diverse needs and experiences within the community, so that that's then reflected in the eventual build. I think that's perhaps a piece that I feel gets back to the purpose of the citizen advisory piece. I'm not sure if that's correct, and I don't want to speak for my fellow councillors, but if that's a piece that's resonating.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie, did you have a question or comment, or?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. Perhaps myself, and maybe I'm alone on this island or not, I'm not sure. I'm not struggling with the terms of references that staff has provided us with here. I believe that the composition is a good reflection of what we're looking for. And I don't believe that we do have a motion at this time. And I would like to put one on the table, if I may. And that is that we proceed with the Grand Trunk Renewal Committee and with the terms of reference as provided. And further, that staff be authorized to advertise for the ad hoc Grand Trunk Renewal Committee members and to bring applications received to council for consideration.
Thank you. Just as a comment, I also attended that meeting last fall when the campaign was ongoing, and I believe this is addressing the same thing to that question, that this is the citizens group that was being proposed. But I see Councillor or Mayor Ritzma has a comment or question.
I'd certainly like to second that that motion for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a mover in Councillor Beattie, which I believe is to accept the terms of reference as written, and then to authorize staff to advertise for the ad hoc Grand Trunk Renewal Committee. Any further question or comment on that? Councillor Seven, then Councillor Bean.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm going to speak against the motion as it stands. I think I'm not going to put a motion at this point, but I think right now I'm thinking that we may need to open up the parameters to make it more less stringent for each sort of individual, or defer this for maybe consultation with the group that sort of spurred this request of council. Those are just my thoughts, and I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. Councillor Bean, and then Councillor Henderson.
Would increasing the citizens at large to 2 instead of 1, would that satisfy the desire to have more citizen engagement? And if you leave it at citizen at large, that still provides opportunity for anyone from that group to apply. So I don't feel it needs to be specified that they must be a part of that group to apply. But if you had more citizen involvement, would that, I'm just wondering if that's what Councillor Henderson is looking for.
Councillor Henderson.
Well, I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to be able to go to that night at the Copper Light. I just feel that groups put a lot of time and effort, and they brought people from outside to come and talk about their concerns, that it would be a benefit to us to have them as part of the group. And my main reason behind that is I was very surprised, and I think anybody that was there would know I asked the question, when they talked about how you don't necessarily have to fundraise to build the Cooper site, that you get partners and bring them in. So I think it would be a benefit to us to have their knowledge along with everybody else.
Thank you.
Myself, I would personally like to amend it to include a rep from the Grand Truck Committee.
Okay, I think before we consider that, do we need to deal with the motion on the floor first, Ms. Defoe?
No, you have to deal with that.
Through the chair, if there is intent to amend the terms of reference, my recommendation would be to amend them and then to vote on the motion that's on the floor as amended.
Thank you. And Councillor Burbach, you had a comment or question?
Yes, comment. Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. I'm just looking at the list of potential candidates and thinking about the group that exists, which I'm not sure is an official group or is just a gathering of like-minded people. But many of those people in that group, I think there is a lawyer. I think there are some crossovers where people who are involved with a group have expertise that is listed in the terms of reference. So I don't see this as excluding anybody necessarily. If we want to have a second person at large, then maybe that's a way to expand it a little bit. I think the purpose seems to be in line with what that group recommended, because I also went to that meeting to support the master plan that we have already and to act as a sounding board. And I'm not sure if Councillor Seven, if you saw something that was a different purpose at that meeting that you could articulate, because I just don't. I think this seems to be what was being requested by that citizen group.
Councillor Seven, did you have a comment to that, or?
Sure, through the chair, Councillor Burback, I guess my concern lies in that we're being too stringent perhaps with the terms of reference and the requirements. But I suppose, and I'll ask through the chair, Ms. Defoe, if we advertised for this and we had a number of applications that did not meet the criteria, but we didn't have any, let's say we didn't have an accountant apply, could we then fill that spot at council's discretion and direction with somebody else who had applied?
Ms. Defoe.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So with tonight's direction, if this motion is passed, the terms of reference would be adopted and then staff would proceed to solicit applications for the committee. All of the applications received would then be provided to council. And at that point, council can make any determination they want when appointing members to an advisory committee or an ad hoc group. They could also make a motion to amend the terms of reference in order to expand the number of individuals appointed or decrease, or to make exceptions. So that is certainly an option available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Ritzma, and then
Yes,
Councillor McCabe.
If I may, thank you. Through the chair, just a comment. I did attend that meeting and it was abundantly clear that they weren't running that particular meeting to gain an opportunity to be on an advisory committee. It was to bring attention to the project and to promote the project, not only as an election issue, but also as an issue for council to address early on in its mandate. So I don't believe we should get caught up in trying to find a spot for individuals from that committee, because that was not their intent of bringing us together. And I went as a resident as well, and that they made abundantly clear. They weren't there to say, and furthermore, we'd like to be on the committee.
Thank you. I think there was a question from Councillor McCabe, then Councillor Niger, and then Councillor Henderson.
I guess where I am falling down on this is the concern for me is that the master plan as designed in 2017 has been overtaken by events in the real world regarding funding and the nature of the site and what we need as a city. So and I think that was also the concern of this group when they brought it to our attention.
Councillor Niger, you had a comment or question?
Thank you, through the chair. I attended that meeting as well, and the message that I got and the feeling that I got when I left was, I want to echo what Mayor Ritzma had mentioned. It was more of a kind of an advice what they wanted to, but it was not like any one of them wanted to be part of this team moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
I just want to say I'm withdrawing my motion because as Councillor Seven, as the group gets going and if they need extra help, they can always come back to council and we can amend the bylaw if more is needed later.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Councillor Burbach?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, just a comment about the Grand Trunk Master Plan as adopted by City Council. That was adopted by not the previous council, but the council before that. And an advisory group would not be able to change that. So it's up to us as council to, if we decided that wasn't the route that we wanted to go, that would be our decision. And maybe the discussion at that group might provide us an opportunity to say, hey, maybe that needs some adjusting, and then it can come to council via that route. But an ad hoc advisory group would not be making that decision in and of itself.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I see none. So Ms. Defoe could correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded that we accept the terms of reference as drafted and that staff be authorized to advertise for the ad hoc Grand Trunk Renewal Committee members and to bring applications received to council for consideration. And I'm getting a nod from the clerk, so I will call the question then. All in favor? And that is carried. Oh, my apologies. Yeah, Ms. Dayfall, I forgot to ask about opposed. And all opposed? Thank you. So the motion is carried. Thank you. I wonder at this point, we're getting close to 2.5 hours in, if we should take a 5-minute break and then resume at 7:55. Is that acceptable? Thank you. I have 7:55 on, or 56 now on my clock, so we'll carry on. Item number 6 is budget requests from local boards. And if I could turn to Mr. Gribble, CEO of Destination Stratford, then for his presentation. Go ahead, Mr. Gribble, when you're ready. Oh, thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for this opportunity to present Destination Stratford's 2023 budget and highlight some information about the organization, as well as substantiate its value to the city and community. So included in the presentation materials and the budget package is our board-approved 2023 budget, which has the city contribution at $595,000. That represents a 2.5% increase over last year's contribution. The budget also outlines our main expense categories, including administration, staff, and marketing. So separate from the Destination Stratford budget are special projects, and some of which I'll be discussing in a moment. And these require additional investments from provincial and federal grants. As a nonprofit entity separate from the city, we are eligible for many government grant opportunities that municipalities are not. So in 2022, Destination Stratford was able to secure over $1 million in provincial and federal funding for direct investment in our community for projects such as Stratford Alfresco, Lights on Stratford, and the Boathouse Public Washroom Expansion Project. So here's a quick overview of our organizational structure. Destination Stratford was historically a member-based organization, but started investigating non-member models several years ago. And in 2020, piloted a non-membership model. In 2022, the board officially adopted the non-member model, allowing the organization to take a holistic approach to maximize overall impact for the community and the destination. At that time, we also did a comprehensive corporate bylaw and policy update and legal review. Destination Stratford's industry-led volunteer board of directors is comprised of respected local business and tourism leaders representing several sectors, including accommodation, event, culinary, producer, retail, association, as well as a member at large, with all the current directors listed here on this slide. The board has 2 appointed directors, 1 council representative, and 1 Stratford Festival representative. Ex officio board members include a representative from the Ontario Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, the executive director, and the CAO of the City of Stratford. Destination Stratford's core team includes 6 full-time employees, each of whom contributes a wealth of destination marketing and management expertise. We also employ several part-time positions and are responsible for project-specific employment of multiple seasonal positions for Alfresco and Lights on Stratford, at times with up to 20 additional staff. In 2022, we created 4 separate tourism advisory committees for accommodation, retail, culinary, and festivals and events. Each committee has 10 volunteer members that were intentionally recruited to represent expertise across a wide spectrum of businesses and organizations within each of those sectors. And all 40 individuals and the businesses they represent are listed on this slide and are also publicly available on our website. The committee meetings are hosted twice per year, starting last November, and they're a productive and efficient way for each tourism sector to share and discuss opportunities and challenges from their unique perspective. And this is invaluable for informing and shaping our marketing and development projects. So Destination Stratford's various initiatives and projects fall into 3 main categories: destination marketing, destination development, and destination management. This presentation is going to quickly touch upon a couple of examples from each category. Our marketing team oversees a wide variety of campaigns and initiatives throughout the year that focus on attracting new and repeat visitors to our community, as well as keeping Stratford top of mind as a cultural destination of choice. And as displayed here, our marketing campaigns are active across a wide variety of distribution channels. In 2022, here's how our advertising budget was allocated by distribution channel, and some of which, such as broadcast television, are very expensive. So our team strategically optimizes spends by channel for maximum overall impact for the tourism sector. Like all sectors, the conventional approach to marketing has been massively disruptive by both technology as well as the pandemic. We continue to grow our focus on leveraging the visitor as marketer by virtue of highly shareable experiences within our destination, and also through the strategic use of social media influencers who are able to highlight all aspects of their visit, including the accommodations they stayed at, where they dined, where they shopped, as well as their cultural experiences. Working intentionally with specific influencers also allows us to meaningfully connect to very specific audiences and demographics that are otherwise difficult, if not impossible, to reach. We employ a Made in Stratford solution philosophy and work with local videographers and photographers throughout the year to build our media database and to develop marketing materials. Here's a short video produced in 2022 that highlights one of Destination Stratford's culinary trails. And here's another example video showcasing Lights on Stratford that is part of a TV ad campaign distributed throughout the GTA to London corridor. Another important digital asset is our visitstratford.ca website. This has over 250,000 users last year, and included here are the annual metrics comparing 2022 to 2021. This slide shows where our online visitors are coming from geographically for 2022, and I'm pleased to report that we're starting to see a return of activity and interest from outside of Ontario at this stage of the pandemic recovery, including some slow growth indicated south of the border. So our guiding principles for all of our destination development and management initiatives are included here. Each project must holistically improve our community, grow the tourism economy, enhance the visitor's experience, and maintain and expand our tourism and community infrastructure. One of our destination development projects is Lights on Stratford, and here are this winter's visitation metrics for our displays that are tracked by staff. As of last Sunday, we've welcomed over 70,000 guests across our main locations, and we do estimate that another 12,000 would have visited were it not for the county-wide closure with the extreme storm over the holidays, represented with snowflakes here. The attendance includes over 5,000 people at the Destination Stratford office between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., which we decided this winter to keep staffed as a warming station with an accessible public washroom. We're also really proud about this year's collaboration with Stratford Transit in providing a free to the public accessible hop-on, hop-off shuttle bus throughout the 6-week festival, and it's had over 3,000 rides so far, including introducing many children to our public transit for the first time. This weekend features Stratford's On for Lights On, a collaboration with Downtown Stratford BIA, and over 60 businesses staying open late to welcome our guests. So twice per week, our staff survey patrons at the Tom Patterson Island location to collect their origin city. To date, roughly 1/3 of our patrons are local residents, 18% are from the immediate region, and just over 50% are from 40 kilometers away, which is the provincial definition of a visitor. Lights on Stratford is an example of our strategic approach to winter development by creating an anchor tenant for other cultural experiences to join in. We're thrilled this year to have Stratford Summer Music, Springworks, Puppet Works, and Stratford Perth Museum add new winter programming in conjunction with Lights on Stratford. Lights on Stratford has received incredible supportive and positive feedback from local residents, visitors, and tourism businesses. And just last week, Blog.to, with its millions of followers, published a pretty incredible article about Stratford as, quote, one of the best places in the province to visit during the winter months. Another successful destination development initiative is our year-round and seasonal culinary trails that provide visitors with new ways to explore our city while directly supporting local businesses. Amazingly, we set new sales records for all of our culinary trails throughout the pandemic. The most popular is here, the Chocolate Trail, which retails for $35 and includes 6 vouchers that can be used at 23 different business partner locations across the city. Comparing pre-pandemic 2019 to 2022, sales increased by over 65%. Similarly, our Bacon and Ale Trail, which features 17 business partner locations, grew by 84% when comparing 2022 to 2019. And our Christmas Trail, featuring 35 local business partner locations, also set a new record and also grew over 65% compared to pre-pandemic 2019. Destination Stratford is an active participant in many collaborations and partnerships, including the sport tourism strategy that was presented at Council yesterday evening. And at Council's direction, we look forward to working with the steering committee to develop a funding plan and collectively shape and form a sport tourism advisory committee. Another current collaborative project is the Municipal Cultural Plan that is being managed as a partnership with the city and will be presented to Council this spring. A current project that we're really proud of is the Welcoming Community Initiative that focuses on equity, diversity, and inclusion. This project was created by Destination Stratford to build a community-wide collaboration, including partners such as the city, Stratford Festival, United Way, Invest Stratford, Stratford Public Library, Stratford Chambers, Stratford Perth Pride, and many others. Yesterday, we hosted over 50 participants at the first of 4 facilitated public community conversation sessions to collectively define what it means for Stratford to be a welcoming community. And we look forward to presenting this definition to Council this spring. A great example of a destination management infrastructure initiative is the Boathouse Public Washroom Expansion Project. Destination Stratford proposed the idea of combining our Boathouse tourism kiosk with the outdated seasonal washrooms into a modern, accessible, and greatly expanded year-round public washroom. We successfully obtained federal funding to contribute a majority of the cost for this public infrastructure project and are working in partnership with the city and community services to project manage the renovation. We are just at the finishing stages now and will be unveiling and opening the upgraded year-round facility next month. Our unique approach to marketing, developing, and managing the destination is being recognized. We're honored to have received 2 innovation awards in 2022, one from the Stratford and District Chamber of Commerce and 1 provincial award from TIO, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. Our team looks forward to sharing Destination Stratford's comprehensive 2022 year in review report with the public and Council in a few weeks in February. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Burback.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thanks for this presentation and thanks for all the great work you've been doing. I just had a question about the membership model. I was one of the councillors who's very glad to see that go. And I'm just curious though about how you maintain ties with the people who were previously members. So I think the membership model sort of excluded people because it made them have to pay into benefiting from some of your programs. So I'm just curious as to how the downside of not having a membership model is that you maybe don't have the same vehicle to connect with people. So I'm wondering about, do you still have a membership type of email list or like how do you connect with the stakeholders that you're representing?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. It's a great question, and all the DMOs out there that transition to a non-member model need to solve this in terms of communication. So we have maintained all of the pre-existing membership emails. We send out communications by sector where appropriate, but to the entire list every 2 weeks with a industry newsletter. We have, I would argue, more partnerships and collaborations than ever before. So there's a significant amount of opportunity for communications throughout those partnerships through our various service offerings and programs. And our door is always open. So we receive communications on a daily basis from a wide variety of tourism operators, as well as partners and at the provincial and federal level. And we respond to all of that. So I think the communications are actually quite healthy from our perspective. We also recently, as I mentioned, set up those tourism advisory committees specifically so that we could hear from a very wide variety within each sector. So part of the problem with a membership is that there is an us and them component of who is a member and who isn't. That transition has really allowed us to focus holistically on the destination and to not focus perhaps on particular membership but needs. So that has led to destination development projects like the public washroom, et cetera. So we can holistically look at the destination and focus in on marketing efforts, on development efforts and management efforts that lift the entire sector at once, while still maintaining good communications throughout the industry.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor McCabe?
Thanks for the presentation, Zach. Obviously, the Lights on Stratford seems to be going very well. One of the questions that I get asked is around the Lights on Stratford as a separate entity. How does that get reported, or does it get reported anywhere?
So Lights on Stratford has been solely funded outside of city budget and our budget. So it has been funded by local corporate sponsorship and provincial and federal grant monies. It started off as an economic recovery initiative and has grown from there. So to date, there's been no city-related funding going towards the operations of Lights on Stratford. We are beholden to the bodies that produce those grants, and there is significant reporting involved at the province and federal level, including official accounting audits, et cetera, to make sure that all those monies were used as per the contractual obligations involved with those grants. So to date, that is the reporting body that we report to for Lights on Stratford, and there is a separating line in Destination Stratford's operating budget that is not commingled with Lights on Stratford for that reason.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I see none. So I'll thank you, Mr. Gerbil, for your presentation, and we'll move on to Ms. Gerber.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. As I echo Zach's gratitude and thanking you for your time. I will also attempt to share my screen. One moment, please. Just let me know when you're able to see those slides. Everyone's good. Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Burbeck. I saw that thumbs up. So as I mentioned, thank you very much. The Stratford Economic Enterprise Development Corporation is pleased to give you an overview of what we do. You'll affectionately hear us referred to as SeedCo, Invest Stratford. We also support the small business and entrepreneurship interests of our business community through the Stratford Perth Centre for Business or the Small Business Enterprise Centre. Needless to say, lots of ways to describe us or to refer to us, but essentially we bring and represent the economic interests of the City of Stratford and City Council in our day-to-day work. We do that through three programming pillars, and I will get to those in a brief second, but I wanted to highlight here our guiding principles, supporting a strong and robust workforce with a focus on climate stewardship and technology and thoughtful attention to equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And of course, some strategic enablers there as well, including our strong marketing and communications, our meaningful relationships, not only with council, but the community and our international partners, and working very hard to be agile with strong governance and data-driven reporting. Our board of directors, we are governed by a board of directors and a set of bylaws. They are sector specific, including 4 city representatives, 2 city councillors, of which this term is Councillor Beattie, Councillor Hunter, Mayor Ritzma, as well as our CAO, Ms. Joan Thompson. The other sectors that are represented here are agriculture, technology, digital arts, manufacturing, a citizen at large position, small business, finance, and there is a seat dedicated to either the University of Waterloo's Stratford School of Interaction, Design and Business or Festival Hydro. It's important to note that while our board does the recruitment of our individual members, they are approved by you as City Council as their terms renew. And as a board that does a lot of work with business, we renew at a bit of a different schedule. I know many of your advisory councils follow the terms of City Council. Our board follows a three-year term. 2 3-year terms each board member is able to be considered for. So they do turn over a little bit differently, and you'll see that through the course of your term on council. This is our team. There are 5 of us, full-time equivalent individuals. We do, as similar to Zach, as we have special projects, we do add individuals. We're blessed right now to have my Main Street, and we've got 2 contract individuals working with us for another couple of weeks to finish off that project. We are accountable to you in a multitude of ways. We report quarterly to this committee through the chair and the vice chair and the committee members. We do appear before council more frequently, as we did yesterday when we have special projects that council has oversight on. We also support the sale of city-owned industrial land. So you'll see us from time to time on those projects as well. Our 3 programming pillars, these are sort of our real key operating objectives and the work that we do every day. The first being business retention, expansion, and support. This is where you'll find us providing that concierge style service to new and existing expanding businesses, making sure that the quote unquote doors to City Hall are always open and able to be engaged with in a wonderfully efficient way. This is also where we do our workforce development efforts, working with our partners in education and social services. We try to do some thought leadership. We've gotten a little behind on that through COVID as we weren't able to gather, but we had started working with our business owners on areas around climate stewardship, innovation. You'll see coming through our small business team, we're doing some small business and climate stewardship programming so that our small businesses know how they can make a difference. And the manager of your climate change has been a part of that. So working collaboratively with the various city departments to support our business retention and expansion and supporting them along the way. The second pillar is our investment attraction and sector development. So this is where we work very closely with yourselves as council members and the city's corporate leadership team when we're talking about business parks and employment lands. We do our investment attraction regionally. So, many hands make less work, if you will. And so we work collaboratively with the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance to promote the region internationally. Our provincial, federal, and trade commission partners are critical to this work. I can tell you that the Stratford brand is incredibly popular around the world, and that has an awful lot to do with the quality of this community and the value of place. Working with Invest Ontario, Invest Canada, and the Trade Commission services has allowed us to attract companies from those target international regions. It basically allows us to be in market as often as possible, even when we can't physically be in market. Our representatives are there to make sure those connections to businesses looking to grow in Ontario and most specifically in Stratford are there. This is also where we look at our smart city initiatives and our technology investments, working very closely with Festival Hydro and Rhizome Networks. And then our final programming pillar, which is certainly not third for any reason other than it just happens to be on my screen, is our business creation and entrepreneurship. This is where we support our small businesses in partnership with the Stratford Perth Centre for Business, which is co-funded by the city with the province of Ontario. We're collaborating a lot here with our partner organizations. Zach had mentioned before, Destination Stratford. We work very closely with the city's BIA, the Perth Community Futures, the Chambers of Commerce, really making sure that our business owners have access to as much as we possibly can get them access to. We also reach across all sectors, so we are not specific to one, retail or manufacturing or you know, restaurants. We are trying to support as many and as all as we can. And this is also where we're maintaining our active relationships with all levels of government. And that's critically important. We saw through COVID that Stratford had such a great government relationship that they provided us with large pools of funding to invest into our communities. And that speaks a lot to not only the reputation of Stratford and Invest Stratford, but also our ability to activate quickly and to support our businesses directly. And so I'm always very proud of those relationships, and we work really hard to maintain those. So we'll get to the budget. Now, I did want to point out that this is on 2 slides, but it is a balanced budget. So I'll show you the expenses on the next slide, but this is, of course, our revenues. So a few highlights here that I did want to bring your attention to. The City of Stratford funding for our Small Business Enterprise Center at $108,000 leverages an additional $217,000 from the province of Ontario. You've heard me speak about this a lot. That is a contract we have with the province to offer the Small Business Enterprise Center, but it is not possible without the investment from the City of Stratford. This money directly impacts the grants we make into the businesses in our community, the young entrepreneurs and the startups. So it's critically important. It's a critically important relationship, and I'm highlighting it here. Pardon me, because I want to ensure that the importance is there's an awareness of the importance of how we stretch our dollars and how we use them to do significant good. The other match here is our special projects, and this is projected in 2023 to be just over or just under 52,000. But a lot of projects come up mid-year, and similar to Destination Stratford, the structure you have created for Invest Stratford does allow us to apply for grants outside of the municipal body, and we can take advantage of those mid-year. So as an example, in 2022, those projects totaled more than $270,000. And one final note there that our housing special project of the $33,750, this is not net new money. This is carried forward from 2022. Our project on the housing initiative runs from April of 22 to March 31st of 23. So we wanted to accurately reflect the carry forward of those funds and the associated expenses. And later last week, you would have seen the conference board report come through, and we're pleased by their research and their calculations that SeedCo does provide a return on investment to this community of 200%. And that is the investment you make in us in our operating budget compared against the estimated tax revenue from our new and existing investment projects. So we're pretty proud of that. And finally, how we spend your wise investment in us. You'll see there 60% of our funds are wages, benefits, training, and professional development. As is the case for most organizations like ours, that is the predominant direction of where that money goes. Overhead rent and equipment, I do bring your attention to that. We pay the City of Stratford rent for our space at 82 Erie. We also pay for the support of the finance department and the IT department. So when the City of Stratford is our bookkeeper, which allows us to be very efficient and we have access to our information very quickly. And that has proven exceptionally useful when we're applying for grants, similar to Zach's experience where the reporting and the auditing does attach to those projects. We have exceptional access to our information. And so of that 16%, the majority of that is actually paid back for the city services that are provided. Our sort of third largest chunk of the pie there is our external relations and our marketing. And as the marketing engine for the City of Stratford's business interests, you would expect that this would be a reasonably significant chunk of the pie. And of course, finally, our grants and events. And I always like to bring your attention to this because these are funds that are going directly into the owners of the businesses that you're seeing in the grocery store, that you're going into on the street fronts. And you're really making an impact. And without the city's contribution, those programs and those projects would not happen. So it is a balanced budget. This has been board approved, but is being submitted to you as council for approval of the municipal portion. And I will attempt to stop share my screen and answer any questions through Chairperson Hunter you may have for me.
Sorry, Councillor Briscoe.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you so much. Such exciting things happening for our entrepreneurs and the support that you give them. I'm just wondering if we are able to quantify kind of the return on investment that we have from our kind of the grant program we have for our entrepreneurs that then go on to have quite successful businesses in our community, and if we have any numbers or will be working to get those numbers.
So thank you for that question through the chair for Councillor Briscoe. We certainly do. We know that, and I can give you a couple of quick examples, and then when we report to the Finance and Labor Relations Subcommittee, you'll see those numbers specifically as the grant programs happen. But we know that the approximately $60,000 of starter company funding that gets invested into our startup companies, on average, we're seeing that tripled in the investments that they're able to receive from either traditional or character-based lenders. So they're using our $5,000 startup grant to leverage additional loan funding or to leverage additional grants at on average 3 times the $5,000. Our young entrepreneurs receive $3,000 in summer company programming grants. And I can tell you that for the most part, they generally all earn some revenue. Young entrepreneurs, even the ones that are successful, don't always make a ton of money over the course of the summer, but they learn a lot about running a business. One in particular last summer, a young gentleman named Noah, he started a painting business and he ended up with over $83,000 in revenues through the course of the summer. So they are significant and they are incredibly impactful. And those are metrics that we do report back to you as those grants happen throughout the calendar year. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? It looks like none, so I'll thank you for your presentation, Ms. Gerber, and we'll move on to Police Chief Skinner.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I appreciate the opportunity for myself and Deputy Chief Foster to present to Council the board or the budget proposal for 2023. I was hoping that we would have a slide deck teed up. I don't know if that's possible or not, and if not, there we go. Okay, so if we can have the next slide, please. So I thought we would start by talking about our governance model for the police service in Stratford. The guiding legislation, I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves, but the guiding legislation for the police services in Ontario is the Police Services Act. The police service is governed by a 5-member police services board that consists of 2 council representatives, the mayor and the deputy mayor at this point, 2 provincial representatives, and 1 community representative. The police service also reports to 5-member community police advisory committees in St. Mary's and Perth South. And as you will know, that we took over the policing responsibilities for St. Mary's and Perth South in November of 2018. The role of the Police Services Board is to appoint members of the police service, generally determine the objectives and priorities of the police service, establish policies for the effective management of the service, recruit, appoint, and performance manage the chief and deputy chief, establish guidelines for dealing with complaints, and submit operating and capital estimates to council for review and approval. The budgets of police services in Ontario are reviewed and deliberated on a line-by-line basis by the police services boards as legislated by the Police Services Act. At the beginning of each budget cycle, the Police Services Board is made aware of the city's budget increase expectations and is responsible for submitting a budget in line with those expectations. The role of council is to either approve the overall budget as submitted by the board or refer it back to the board for further rework. Councillors do not have the authority to approve or disapprove specific line items in the budget estimates. Wages and benefits account for almost 90% of the police budget, and the Police Service Board approved the 2023 police budget estimates for submission to council on the 18th of October of 2022. The Stratford Police priorities are to enhance public trust, provide investigative excellence, increase accountability, be more responsive to the communities we serve, support multidisciplinary service delivery models to resolve complex social issues, share services, infrastructure, and resources to realize economies of scale and minimize service or maximize service to the public, focus on mental health both externally and internally, and of course, most of all, make a difference. And we're finally on the slide that's on the screen. Challenges for 2023, social issues continue to drive the police workload. Mental health, addiction, self-harm, including suicide and overdose, homelessness, and family violence are what I refer to as the top 5. Public demand for police accountability through fiscal transparency, diversity, demilitarization, body-worn cameras, legislative change, enhanced training, and so on. Reliance on technology with next generation 911 communication systems, red light and speed enforcement cameras, digital evidence management, communication systems upgrades, electronic crime investigations with the proliferation of video, cell phone, and computer downloads. And lastly is the health and well-being of our members. Stress, injury, and illness management, work-life balance, and a 24/7, 365 scheduling, succession planning, recruitment, training, and the subsequent impacts on overall morale. The 2023 opportunities, community safety and well-being plan is developing partnerships and relationships to break down silos across our municipalities. The Community Equity Action Team is supporting our diversity initiatives. The expansion of our mobile crisis rapid response team is providing support for those in our community who are experiencing crisis and those family members who are having difficulty navigating the mental health system. Enhanced training for frontline officers and other risk mitigation strategies, primarily through prisoner care and control. Leveraging partnerships with PRIDE agencies beyond technology. And PRIDE is an acronym referring to the partnerships we have with the Waterloo Regional Police Service, Guelph Police Service, Brantford Police Service, and the South Simcoe Police Service. Continued efforts on call for service analysis for staffing and officer deployment priorities, and implementation of a part-time policing program to support strategic patrol initiatives. And that's about having the right people in the right places at the right times doing the right things. And further engagement of our auxiliary unit in crime prevention efforts and increases in provincial government money to support operations. At this point, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Foster for him to run through the budget pieces.
Thank you, Chief. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm running on a new computer tonight. I apologize for the slide deck issue at the start. So you can see from the budget materials that we've presented, we have an ambitious budget request for 2023. At the onset, one of our obligations is to address collective bargaining, which is taking place currently now within the service and the main association, which comprises the vast majority of the members in the organization. I just have to see here because I am, there we go. Okay, there we go. We were looking at supporting costs associated with the expansion of the services radio system and other information technology projects. So the police service is currently finalizing a major upgrade to the police service radio system, going from 1 tower location in the city to a total of 4 to improve officer safety and radio communications. Along with that, we are expanding other IT projects, including a VxRail server management system, and looking to deploy an interview room solution that is congruent with our body-worn camera project that has been ongoing for the past year. As the chief mentioned, we are also expanding or looking to expand our complement of part-time special constables. And the expansion is to support the digital evidence that's being collected now from our officers for body-worn camera, and to allow for non-sworn members to do the disclosure and redaction processes for court and prosecution purposes, FOI, and that sort of thing. And one thing that we're learning more and more policing every year, policing is becoming more and more software based. And as a result, each and every vendor we're dealing with is moving from a one-time purchase solution to a constant licensing solution. So we've made adjustments to the budget to cover those anticipated costs as well. Moving over to the capital side, as I switch spreadsheets here. You'll see in 2023, we are planning on doing 50% of our desktop computers being refreshed. We have earmarked vehicle replacements for a total of 4 police cruisers, 3 that are belonging to the city of Stratford and 1 that belongs to the town of St. Mary's. And the town of St. Mary's covers the cost of that through their budget process. The chief was able through the ministry to obtain funding for a CCTV expansion, which we will be working with social services on in 2023. So there's funding set aside for that, but we have received grant money from the ministry for that purpose. And as most of the members know, in 22, the provincial government got rid of the validation sticker on license plates. And what they've done to support police operations is provided grant funding so that police cruisers can be equipped with automated license plate reader technology. The option we've chosen to go with also incorporates in-car video, and that is also the same vendor that we've chosen for the body-worn camera system. So by mid-2023, all of our marked vehicles will have in-car video. Next thing on the capital list is a building feasibility study. I believe those that were in attendance at the rec center on the weekend probably have heard about the issues with our building. I'll just stop there. And anyway, we've asked for money to support a feasibility study for that purpose. And then the chief mentioned earlier, Next Gen 911 or NG 911, and that is the next iteration of the 911 emergency call system, which we are deploying in Stratford through the Pride Group in 2024. One of the requirements of that integration of that system is that we have and maintain a backup communication center, which we currently do not have. So we are funding, trying to put funds in there for that purpose for 2023. Most of the 10-year capital items on the list are funded through the operating budget in the corresponding year. Exceptions include the anticipated cost of a new police facility. And you'll see that one persistent cost is the replacement of police vehicles. Our marked vehicles, we rotate those approximately every 3 years due to the wear and tear that they receive. And we have approximately 7 years earmarked for our administrative vehicles, depending on their mileage. A few years back, the service started to deploy hybrid patrol vehicles. We have had great success with them, and they have helped contain the ever-increasing fuel budget. The vehicles we plan to replace in 23 will all be hybrids. As far as expansion requests go, last year we ran a pilot study for records manager position, which is a civilian leadership position within the organization. So we have recommended to the board that that position be cemented as a permanent position. We have a mental health, wellness, and resiliency position within the service. That is also funded by grant. The pilot completed, or excuse me, I guess it's today, completed today. And we will continue to receive that funding. That program will continue in 2023. As the chief mentioned, we are hoping to initiate a part-time policing program in 23 and have received grant funding for that. And I spoke already about the body-worn camera support project. And I will hand it over to the chief.
You're muted, chief.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy. You'll see that before you on the slide, there's our strategic priorities for the police service: visionary leadership, healthy workforce, community engagement, and investigative excellence. Next slide, please. And as we like to do always, is link our strategic priorities back to the strategic priorities as identified by the city. And when we look at mobility, accessibility, and design excellence for police activities, we look at the collaboration with city staff on the motor vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle collision analysis to make our streets, intersections, and sidewalks safer. We look at our contribution to the municipal traffic safety plan and the integration of technology in our voluntary compliance and enforcement strategy. When under the heading of strengthening our plan, strategies, and partnerships, the police activities that link are the community safety and well-being plan implementation, building partnerships through the community equity action team, and building internal communication through inclusion with the corporate leadership team. And through the developing of resources, transitioning the police fleet to hybrid vehicles, as the deputy indicated, we are almost fully converted to hybrid vehicles, or will be by the end of the year, assuming that the supply chain doesn't hold up our delivery. Enhancing safety and security around existing and new affordable housing developments and partnerships with social services. And that links directly with the CCTV grant and further implementation, and increasing our funding and grant opportunities to expand service delivery and improve police facilities. And then finally, under widening our economic activities, promoting community safety through increased visibility and public engagement, foot patrol, bike patrol, auxiliary members deployment, expanding the mobile crisis rapid response team program to address mental health, addiction, homelessness in the community, and improving infrastructure to support expansion of the service. And Chair, that is the presentation for the police service, and we are open to taking any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Henderson?
I was curious if you have figures on, since you switched over to using hybrid, I'm looking at maintenance costs, oil changes, different things like, I don't know if they have oil. Anyway, you know what I'm saying is the difference between, I think you were doing a pilot of a brand new car and a brand new hybrid and then doing a connection. I'm just curious if you actually have a breakdown of how much is actually saved, or were there parts where it cost us more than we thought?
It's very difficult to do the apples to apples comparison because of the different driving that's done in each vehicle by each patrol officer, and the fact that they're running 24/7, 365. What we have found is that there is a higher cost, initial cost of buying a hybrid. We do save on fuel, and you'll see our overall fuel budget line has decreased, but of course that also is impacted by the price of fuel and those fluctuations throughout the year. And we also recoup some of the costs through a higher trade-in value when we do trade in the vehicles on new vehicles. So there are some cost savings. I would not suggest that we saw the cost savings that we were hoping to see, but we did see some cost savings over the life of our hybrid vehicles. So from an investment perspective, I think it was a right investment to make. A lot of our vehicles, as you can imagine in police work, spend time idling, which is all done on battery, which is a cost savings to us and is more environmentally friendly. So I think there are some positives, but truthfully, we haven't seen the significant financial impact from going to hybrid that we were hoping to see. As far as maintenance costs are concerned, yes, there is still oil in a hybrid vehicle, and there is maintenance, but we haven't seen any significant change in the maintenance schedules or the costs of maintenance with our vehicles, recognizing that we don't keep our vehicles for that long, 2 to 3 years, because we mile them out because they are running 24/7, 365.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? It looks like none. So thank you, Chief, for your presentation. And we'll move to Ms. Robinson, Interim CEO of Stratford Public Library.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, thank you. Before we talk about the budget, I want to tell you a little bit about the library. Our Carnegie Library building is celebrating 120 years of service this year. As the pandemic eases, use of SPL continues to grow. In 2022, we were open just under 3,000 hours, and during that time, we saw over 104,000 in-person visits, or approximately 35 people per hour open. Our card holdership is returning to pre-pandemic times, and we are currently at an average of 8,766 active card holders. We anticipate use of the library to continue to increase as the potential for a recession looms. Now, librarians hate this phrase, but libraries really are more than just books. Beyond the core services, the library provides additional social service support, wellness and community benefit services, entrepreneur and art services, and a safe space for community members to find refuge without user fees. This is a slide that shows a few of the different services that we do provide. I'm going to highlight just a couple. We have partnered with YMCA of Three Rivers and their settlement services to support newcomers in Stratford and area. A settlement worker comes to the library once a week, providing information on citizenship, housing, education, and ESL supports. Our librarians also go into the community to locations like the Connection Center to ensure that even our most vulnerable have access to what I feel is the most important card one can have in their wallet, a library card. In 2017, we renovated our library auditorium with support of Stratford City Council and community fundraising. It's a wonderful meeting space that we use to hold programs and meetings, art shows, and now to support the city of Stratford while their elevator is out, weddings are being held there. And we loan the internet. We have wireless hotspots that we allow the public to borrow for 1 week at a time. And we offer online courses for personal development and employment upskilling. Our visiting library service delivers materials to residents who are unable to visit the library due to issues with mobility, disability, or illness. And since we are open 7 days a week, we are seen as a cooling and warming location for our community in extreme weather. And lastly, we are a third place for many in our city. Residents come to us and use our space and our services to help fill a need, whether that's for information, entertainment, technology, or just a smiling face. Our library governance is slightly different than that of other outside boards. A few things that are important to note. Public library service is free in the province of Ontario, meaning that we cannot charge fees to loan materials. The library board is a governing body that gets its authority from the Public Library Act. Our library board is a governance board appointed by City Council, made up of 10 members of the public and 1 City Council representative. The library board appoints a CEO to oversee library operations and the hiring of staff. And the municipalities are the primary funder of public libraries in Ontario. For Stratford, you provide on average 90% of our funding. Other sources include a small provincial operating grant and library contracts with Perth South and the Perth County Information Network. We have seen many successes over the past year. I'm happy to report that we have restored the majority of services from before the pandemic. We became officially fine-free last year for over 99% of our collection and contracted a material recovery service to get the materials back that perhaps just people want to keep a bit longer. The use of the collection, both physically and digitally, has surpassed pre-pandemic levels with a 25% increase over 2019. And our programs hit the highest attendance rate ever for us in last year. We saw over 24,000 attendees at our 863 programs. To manage this success, we have partnered with a number of municipal departments and area organizations to host programs off-site, such as the Stratford Municipal Airport, Stratford Transit, Public Works, and the Humane Society. Our facility also got a well-needed facelift. Our front gardens were updated and landscaped by the Stratford Horticultural Society. We upgraded the carpeting on the children and adults floor. Our children's service desk was redesigned so that it could be ergonomic and accessible for both our patrons and for library staff. And our bathrooms. The new gender-neutral washrooms on the children's floor are just beautiful, and we are very happy to finally have a barrier-free family restroom. And accessible restroom. Also in 2022, we updated our space and service needs study. The study looked at our current facilities and service requirements for today's population and what our needs may be for over the next 20 years. As I mentioned to many of you on the weekend at the City Council speed dating, we are drastically undersized. Currently, with the population of Stratford as it currently is, we're 21,000 square feet undersized. And should the population continue to grow as expected, that discrepancy will continue to grow. And lastly, our library board began work on the creation of the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan. In total, despite offering curbside service at the beginning of 2021 and being closed 1 week in November for renovations, we saw over 1 million interactions with our library. And here are just a few photos highlighting some of the library's outreach into the community, which are with some examples of us improving the quality of life for residents in Stratford. As for opportunities for 2023, we're building on the achievements of last year, and we know we have an exciting year ahead. We are at a time of significant change and growth. We are seeing a lot of movement in the makeup of our library board with 7 new members and senior management. There's been a lot of change in that area as well. We will be unveiling our new strategic plan, which will provide direction for us over the next 4 years. While the plan has yet to be approved by our new library board, this plan will give us a broad horizon and provide us space for adaptability in a constantly changing environment. And I look forward to sharing our strategic directions with council later this spring. We also look forward to the completion of the washroom renovations, which are currently underway on the adult floor. And I will mention that this item was included as part of the Infrastructure and Development Services capital budget, a project which began in 2022. As for challenges, our main challenges continue to be reconnecting with people whose use dropped during the pandemic. As well, there are many people who are new to Stratford. We want to reach out and connect with them and bring them back or bring them into the library. We know the needs of our community have changed, and we're continuing to adjust our services in order to align to those needs within our current resources. Another challenge is finding space. With the increase, as I mentioned, in attendance at our programs, especially during the summer, our outreach team will be looking at creative ways and new partnerships to offer engaging programming in Stratford. For our operating budget, the library board is proposing a status quo budget with minimal changes. The budget was approved by our library board in October of last year. The budget includes a 2% cost of living adjustment, increases to benefit costs, as other departments have noted. There will be significant increases to CPP in 2023, as well as increases to extended healthcare benefits. We have also adjusted operational lines to reflect actual spending patterns, such as hydro and insurance. As well, revenues have been adjusted to reflect changes to the Perth County Information Network budget and the contract with Perth South. Part of the variance you will see from last year's budget is the result of the space needs study, which was partially paid for by development charges. The total amount requested for 2003 is $2,708,630, which is a 2.57% increase over last year. For the capital budget, the library board is requesting $34,000 for regular replacement of network equipment and workstations. And I will note that a few of those pieces are at end of life. A 2% increase in library collections to cover market increase, and 20,000 of that, 259,000 comes from development charges. Regarding the 10-year capital funding forecast, the current forecast is within the historical funding envelope for the library. covering the typical expenses for collections, technology replacement, periodic building updates, and strategic plans. There's also now a vehicle replacement reserve being built, so any future impacts of vehicle replacements will be minimal. Over the next few years, we'll be gathering information regarding the feasibility of a new library building in our community to go along with our space needs and service study, but at this time, there's no new building in the funding forecast. Thank you very much for listening. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Burback. Oh, no, that was my cursor. It looked like a hand. My apologies. I see no questions, so I'll thank you for that presentation, Ms. Robinson. And we'll move on to item 7, which is a notice of upcoming meetings. They will be on February 7th, 2023 at 5:30, and another one February 21st, 2023 at 5:30, and both of those are location to be determined. Item number 8 is adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Henderson, a second. Councillor Burback, all in favor? And that looks to be unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.